Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon. That's Brendan, and that's Seahawks Brendan Nelson for you if you're not hip to that. Thank you, Brendan, for jumping on in the house today. How's it going?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Things are looking up in Seahawks land right now, I think.
Things are, aren't they? Sort of like bit of a brighter horizons, especially when you match us up against some of those other franchises that are struggling a little bit along in some of their direction and some of the expectation that they were going with going in the season for us who had no expectation yet. We're getting all of the fruitful returns and fruitful runs on this, which is great to see. Well, this upcoming week, and we're going to be very much concentrate on this today. We've got a very important game, I think, for this season going forward, Brendan, and that is that again is the more wins you can kind of stack, the more times you can kind of surprise, the more wins you can maybe take a win that you didn't see on the schedule in the offseason as a win, the better. And with being in the 3-3 mark, I know that there's a lot of people that are in rebuild mode or tank mode, but the door still does remain open at that point, especially considering the rest of the NFC to get potentially into the playoffs if you can get a win like this. So an important game nonetheless. We're going to turn this over from all sides. For you, Brendan, as you look at this game coming in, what are some of the immediate things to you that jump out about this matchup?
Well, it seems like it's all about the injuries, right? This Chargers team, you looked at them in the offseason and there was a lot of talent. This looked like a stacked roster, one of the best rosters in the league. And you weren't sure about the coaching yet. So far, it looks like things have not really gotten better on that front. Maybe we'll talk more about that later. But to me, it's just all about these injuries that have really taken away what was maybe a top 3 roster in the whole NFL. We've got no Bosa, one of the best edges in the NFL. You've got no Rashawn Slater, who had already made the All-Pro team as a rookie, I think. So you would call him one of the best left tackles. We've got Corey Linsley. We don't know what's going on there. Apparently, he's still sick and not practicing that much. So we don't know if we're going to get him. He might be the best center in the league. He's in the conversation.
100%.
Keenan Allen, maybe the best. He's not the best receiver in the league, but he might be the best route runner in the league. We don't know if he's going to play or not. Seems like every week he gets like one a little bit closer, but it seems like he only ever gets closer. He never actually gets to the point where he's playing. So I'm not convinced. And with the way things are going, J.C. Jackson may as well be injured. Maybe he is. I don't know. But with the way he's playing, you may as well say he's not playing, and they've got some guy off the practice squad out there for what he's doing. But yeah, to me, it's all about who's actually going to play, because that roster can often overcome that coaching staff. But the roster in its current state, I mean, we got a great look at it on Monday night when they played the Broncos, and we probably all watched that game. It was a struggle.
It certainly was. I tend to agree with you on this. Their injuries / places that are playing a little underperformatives wise are the combinations for you that give you a little bit more of a feeling you've got more of a chance in this game / you feel like you're really going to give this team a good fight. Versus where you might see them if they were at full strength. If I had both Bosa and Mack rushing these two rookies, this might be I might look at this differently. And J.C. Jackson, you mentioned 35 PFF rating to begin the year so far for a guy that many people thought was the best corner, not even man corner, just best corner in football last year by a lot of people's metrics, including other pros out there. So the fact that they're getting less performance out of that's huge. You mentioned two of their best offensive linemen potentially being out in this game. If Linsley does come back, what state is he in? Has he been just barely keeping fluids down? And, like you said, there was a little bit of a weird thing with him. I was trying to research on it too, Brendan. It was kind of smoke and mirrors or whatever. What's going on with him? Where is he exactly at? Is he coming out of this game? Because I know we were going to be asked about it. I couldn't quite get the answer on that. I do think you're on the right ground with Keenan, because he talked about they've got the bye week next week, right? So he's thinking about, if I just rest the hammy, then I get the extra 2 weeks versus playing this week and going into the bye the week after. And that may play into our favor with some of these guys that are right on that margin line of whether they could play or not play in this particular game. We don't seem to have, though, Brendan, on the other side of it. We've got some injuries, but we don't seem to have the same kind of, they're going to be an arm kind of behind their back a little bit because of the accumulation of this, like you are with Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Lockett because he didn't do much in the last game after not practicing all week. I'm wondering if maybe he's playing through it, but it's limiting his ability to get open and do the things he needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he had such a off game. I will say, I think a lot of it was just the nature of that matchup where we had troubles protecting Geno. But if Tyler Lockett has another rough game this week, I'm going to start wondering if that hamstring is really bothering him. But other than that, it's pretty clean. You're right.
Yeah, I think it's a real worry too, because of course in Tyler Lockett's history, when he has played at a little bit of a good fighting through injury kind of situation, he does seem to be much more reduced at that point. Versus when he is at his healthiest. He also is kind of a little boomer bust at times. He's driven many fantasy football owners crazy because of the fact that sometimes you'll have a couple games like this last week, and then suddenly he comes out and drops 150 on somebody, and you're like, why can't you just do that every week? Come on, let's go. So we'll see if they're maybe protecting, him with that. And it is a little bit worrisome with that. And the hamstring is one of those injuries. If you're going to just keep playing through it, it doesn't necessarily get healthier just playing through it. It really is only rest that'll kind of carry you through the day. Hopefully maybe D. Eskridge, with the way that he's taken a little bit more of the role on here lately and kind of starting to kind of give us a little more glimpses here of pushing forward, can maybe take a little bit more of that role on too. Because of course, I think Penny Hart's out right now, and I know Godwin's fighting through some stuff at times. So, that or Derek Young, it's Derek Young time, one of the two on that one, Brendan, which I don't think Derek's quite ready. So
I'd call up Bo Melton before I trust Derek right now, honestly. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but
I don't know. I think it's both of them had their issues with drops in the preseason. And that's my worry, is that I can't have some crazy drop where the guy goes out and it's right in his hands and it pops up and then that ball's picked and it's directly on that young receiver, versus just having a veteran out there with, maybe he drops it, but it's not going to be bopped back, or he's going to catch it. Being a veteran, if the ball's put in the right spot, he'll make the catch. So it is worth monitoring. You're right to kind of look at that. Seahawks receiving core and what they've been at so far this year has been a big part of their success and how we've been able to attain, what we've been able to attain. I was looking at that game on Monday night with the Chargers, and I guess let's start with their offense with this a little bit, Brendan. And okay, they're down their linemen, which is going to stand out. You're playing against Denver, which has been legitimately a good defense over the course of the whole year. Doesn't matter the opponent. And you still go, okay, we can kind of get after that. They're not going to blast us off the ball. They're not going to control us at the line of scrimmage. We should be able to kind of hold our own against that unit. Kind of even if Lindsley's in there, I still don't think the rest of the unit's necessarily put down in a way that where I feel like we can't. Zion Johnson's a guy they drafted, but he looks like a rookie kind of finding his way to me a little bit. Did he have a couple penalties last week?
He had 3 holding penalties against the Broncos.
And
their right tackle, I think his name is Pipkins. That guy, I don't know what he was doing on Monday night, but if I'm Justin Herbert, I'm very unhappy with that guy getting me killed all those times. Just literally watching basically a guy run past him on so many plays.
Yeah. No, it's going to be something. He's got Darrell Taylor to that side this time. And if he does that with Darrell Taylor is going to be flying past him. You got to move your feet with Darrell. That's minimum. And if you don't, he will get you on that. So that'll be something to monitor with Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be able to push us off the ball, though. I know a lot of people do like Austin Eckler. To me, he's more of one of those do it all kind of running backs, but there's not anything that he's ever really a master of, or that he, it's just kind of a solid all around guy. Does he scare you a lot out of the backfield?
I mean, he's kind of a bad matchup for us, right? That kind of running back feels like it's a problem.
I mean, I don't feel great with our linebackers and coverage on him. I'll give you that. And certainly in the history, you've had running backs out of the backfield. I guess you maybe that's the one spot I worry with him on, is him out of the backfield. But him as a runner, if you're talking about him as their main guy and they're going to try to give him 15, 17, 18 carries in this game, I think that we're going to be able to hold up against that. I don't think he's going to be the thing that hurts us at this thing game. But you're right about how we cover him in space might be more of where the onus lies on this one and stopping that offense.
I mean, if you look at the stuff Carroll said after the Cardinals game about how he changed things on the defensive line, he was letting the defensive linemen not worry so much about reading stuff, I believe he said, and he was just letting them go play. And you see how much better the results are. It makes you feel like the success you had in that game might be a little sustainable. It wasn't just, they just felt good today. It was actually something that you had them doing different that help them play better. So I feel like we can hold up against this Chargers offensive line for sure.
Yeah. It's a good point, and that certainly can help you propel you forward. I feel like maybe it's a little bit of him early on because you're gap and a halfing with this new defense, and it's hard to tell your players if you're Carroll commit to shooting that gap, but still not try to get them. It's like playing the cover 3, right? And you tell your guys to stay clean over the top, but then you also want them to shoot and go make a play, but then you also still want them to remember to stay clean over the top. And so it's probably hard from a coaching standpoint to tell them to just engage, pull the trigger all the way on this one. And maybe that's what he's fully kind of telling. That's what I read into him from saying that, Brendan. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it differently from you on that one, but I see that where he's going, okay, just go with, shoot the gap, just let's see what happens. Let it rip. And I do think that that's going to bring about potentially more bigger plays, potentially those first down stops where it's a 2-3 yard loss because the defensive lineman's firing through. And that just puts those offenses a little bit more behind the sticks at that point. Just puts the defense in more advantageous positions as opposed to the soft zone stuff, which you can find yourself in a lot more of the 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s that are so much easier to convert for offenses.
Yeah, after the Cardinals game, Shelby Harris had the quote that was like, our philosophy today was stop the run so we can have some fun, which is if we stop the run, we're going to force 3rd and long, 2nd and long, and they're going to have to throw, and we'll be able to pin our ears back.
Yeah. It's very true. And it worked that way in this last week. And granted, it was the Cardinal team, but hey, it's Cardinal team putting up 42 points right now. I think they're going to score 74 points in this Thursday night game. By the way, I just scored another touchdown. So it's going to be 42-31 there in this one. But yeah, I certainly think it's something that they can hopefully lean on going forward. We've talked about, Brendan, the defense needs something they can lean their hat on. And if that can be something with making some big plays in there from time to time, because they are able to play a more attacking style kind of mindset. And then you've got the guys in the back end, maybe able to get a little more turnovers like we're seeing from the young guys, especially. It gives you a little bit more hope towards this defense getting a little bit more turn from way back end to maybe getting back to the more of the middle of the road type status of things, even against a tough team like the Chargers.
Yeah, Herbert's great by all means, but he will give you the chance to get a couple turnovers. He's not going to just protect the ball and take no chances.
Where do you see him right now in the echelon? I love using that. Such a great word. Where do you see him in the echelon right now, Brendan, of the NFL quarterbacks?
Top 6, top 7, something like that.
Ooh,
I really like him. Pretty
Yeah.
phenomenal arm. I mean, that throw he made to basically win the game against the Broncos, going against his body, fires it into coverage. Like that's just I look at that and I go, I'm not worried that much about everything else about you if you can make that throw. I'll figure out the rest.
What do you make about, and I agree with you, I like him a lot. I mean, I might have him even top 4. So Allen Mahomes. I mean, I could very well go an Allen Mahomes. Dang, I might be top 4 with him.
I mean,
Myself
it depends on how out are you on Rodgers and Brady, guys who have done everything in this league but are not playing well right now. That's the question.
No, I mean, those old guys fall off fast, Brendan. That's what I'm saying. They fall off fast. So I mean,
Yeah.
and I'd say fall off fast by like, okay, I've got Brady and Rodgers at 5-6, let's say, more than that. It's like they're not dropping to the back necessarily. They just, these guys may be a little bit better in where they're at right now. For me, Herbert's mobility, big arm, ability to throw kind of off platform, like you said, in that one throw where he's not in a comfortable state and his mechanics aren't able to be clean set. He's got to just kind of find a way to get it out of his hand. And he's got such arm strength to still, and such a big body. He's got like that Big Ben kind of thing where it's like they're so big, they're just able to generate torque on the ball, even when it's not just cleanly through, where the smaller guys have to more get their mechanics completely clean to get the ball out really with the like let it rip. But I'm really high on him with that. The one weird part that's hard to make sense of, Brendan, that I still can't figure out an answer to, I'd love to hear what you think about it, is last year I think they threw, at or behind the line of scrimmage more than any team in the NFL. That's the big thing that I see from Charger fans talking about this, or people as they viewed this offense with Staley, and this is a little bit to your we'll talk about here with this coach in a second, but why with a guy that's got this kind of big arm, would they be so hesitant? And this has also led into this season as well. It wasn't just a last year stat. Why wouldn't they want to to push the ball up the field more often. Keenan Allen, the other receiver on the outside, what's his name? I'm spacing on the big bodied guy,
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams. So you got Keenan, Mike Williams on the outside. Why is everything set to when I look at it with them at the line of scrimmage, or even a lot of bubble screens, or right at?
Well, when I look at this last game, I think a lot of it was because the offensive line just could not hold up. I think Denver got like 30 something pressures in that game. In general, I don't know, but I don't like it. I don't care for it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and there's a reason why people are so down on this coaching staff over in LA right now. I almost said San Diego, of course. But yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't know. It's almost like what Cristobal did to him, right?
It's got some echoes of it for sure. I mean, I'm hearing some of that same thing. Yeah. I mean, I think they're letting him play a little bit more improvisationally, but they're not putting more stuff set into it to really get after this arm. And again, you got the receivers on the outside to win. I know Allen's more of an intermediate guy, so that's maybe a little more within his game with it, but certainly Williams on the outside could be a big play guy for you. And he's got the arm to get it done. It's been a little confusing with me, though, to see them do it. It'll be interesting to see how they attack us with that. If they do try to take more shots with us, or they're thinking, oh, let's lean even more into doing kind of this short stuff, because that was the Cardinals' approach this last week, was we're just going to go super short with our attack and just try to really hyper dink and dunk you, to the utmost. We'll go 2-yard routes and let our guys go get it done. Well, I think the defense, if they employ the same kind of strategy they did with the Cardinals this last week, will have similar success if the Chargers are unwilling to go after it down the football field and let Herbert rip. But great point as well on the coaching staff. Your job to put the players in the position to succeed and look at their best. And if they've got these great natural talents and you're not taking advantage of them, and I guess the offensive line thing makes some sense to me, Brendan, but then why not run some more, let's say, two tight end sets with, heavy, heavy pass protection, right? So you end up with like a tight end and a running back there helping with the guys in pass protection if you want to set up those big long routes. Yeah, I don't see them doing any of that last week. Do you remember them doing any of that with that? We've done it at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you'll get the two tight ends then, and you're just getting the extra pass blockers in there essentially to let the 7-yard drop go, 7-step drop rip, which you need the time to do that. But I didn't see them even doing that. It's still a lot of the spread concept, dink and dunk stuff.
Yeah, I didn't notice a lot of that either. I don't really understand what it is they're doing over there right now. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You would think you could really do something like that too when Keenan Allen's out and you're thin at receiver, because Joshua Palmer also had a concussion and missed a lot of that game.
Oh.
Now, they actually also have their backup tight end. I think it's Donald Parham Jr. was also out with a concussion, and he's unlikely to play this week. Same for Joshua Palmer. So that makes things a little bit harder. But it did kind of feel like the plan was just let Herbert get hit over and over and over again with his already bad ribs. And by the way, everybody in chat, I have seen. Stop trying to get my attention, please. I'm aware. Breaking news, big breaking news. We are familiar.
What's the breaking news?
49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey.
Oh Lordy! All right, well let's start getting some of the chats here. I'm getting behind on this, so I'm sure it's going to be posted in the chat. Sanchez with a $2 donation. Thank you, Sanchez. Says Staley's going 1-2 barbecue.
Yeah, he is.
As Brendan touched on it, from the fact that the defense is, I guess they're playing a little bit better this year. He can lean on and say, well, Bosa's out and make that. But this is about what you do with Herbert when you come in as a coach like this. You've been given the golden goose. And if you can't get it to produce eggs, and it doesn't seem to be at the behest of the kid not performing well or taking steps forward, that's going to then find you in the crosshairs really quickly as far as out. And he's already got some questionable things, but he's got these 4th down call things that he's known for. He's like Riverboat Ron, but the AFC version, right, Brendan? Is that a fair assessment on him?
Yeah, I don't have a big problem with him being aggressive on 4th down. The mentality there is, I think, you have a great quarterback. We trust him, so we're going to let him be the guy. I don't have a big issue with that. It doesn't always work out, but it's, not everything you do is going to work out. Everything you do, not just in football, but in life, is a gamble. It's just a different gamble. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a huge problem with that. My problem is last year the Chargers defense was 27th in the league. This year it is currently 26th. It was 31st before that Broncos game. So they needed the I don't know what you would call it, the Nathaniel Hackett special just to get out of the bottom two. And this is a defense that has added Khalil Mack and JC Jackson. So like this is beyond just bad. That is why he needs to go.
And just to support your point on this, Brendan, it's not like they've been running through a murderer's row of offenses either, have they? You have the Raiders, offense has been average. The Chiefs, they lost to. That's a great offense. That's the one really truly vicious one they went up against. The Jaguars, I guess, are average to a little bit better than maybe. Texans below average. I know the Browns are scoring a lot of points this year, but that's still Jacoby Brissett back there, a quarterback for them in that game, putting 30 points up on your defense. And then, of course, this past week they did good against the Bronco defense. But that's not a huge challenge, is it, Brendan, from an opponent standpoint, offensively on that side of the ball? I mean, was there one good offense on there, would you say, of those ones I just listed?
I mean, the Raiders offense is scoring decently well, and so are the Chiefs.
That's the one. I gave them the Chiefs.
So. Yeah, the Chiefs. But Jacoby Brissett going up and down the field on you. I know that's a good offense, but you can't let that happen. You can't let this Jacksonville offense, which is okay, go up and down the field on you like that.
Yeah.
And like you're going to have games, like you still have to play the Chiefs. You're going to have to play the Raiders again. I believe they have to play. I mean, even us, we have a good offense right now. Apparently it's top 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're rolling right so far. We're one of the
so it's not going to get easier. And
No.
again, this is a team that has spent serious money on this. You brought in Khalil Mack, you brought in JC Jackson, you've got Derwin James, you've got Bosa. I know Bosa got hurt. I understand that. You've got
Sebastian Joseph Day, Kyle Van Noy.
Even a guy like Tillery's having a career year right now, finally snapping out of that. Those first 3 years were awful, apparently. Tillery.
Yeah,
and this year he's actually been pretty good, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, he was. I remember him a lot. He's been a while that they've been waiting on that guy for a hot minute. You know, he's been their Rasheem Green essentially. But I looked at him in the Seahawks when he was coming out. I was interested in him, a Notre Dame kid.
By the way, we have the full trade details on Christian McCaffrey now. I just saw it. This is exciting. We'll talk about it in a second here.
Let me get a couple of the chats caught up and then let's roll with that news. Randall with the $20 donation. Thank you, Randall. Says, see Elijah Mitchell asked for a trade. Kid's a stud. Bad look to complain when team's 4-2. Maybe package Eskridge and a 4th or 5th gets it done. I think we can get after the Chargers. Probably more Hawk fans at the game. Ooh, great question on this, Randall. Thank you for the $20 donation.
I'm assuming he means Elijah Moore, not Elijah Mitchell, by the way.
That's who I'm sure he means that as well. Yes. So we know where you're meaning on that, Randall. I'm sure you figured that one out. But yes. Would I trade him with Eskridge? I'd be interested in doing this kind of deal myself, Brendan. I'm sorry to chime in quickly on this one first, but I want to hear where you're coming from. He is a former teammate, I believe, to DK Metcalf at Ole Miss. And I know that him and AJ Brown really like this kid a lot and think highly of him. He's a little bit smaller guy, very near of size to, in fact, Eskridge. I don't know if I would do necessarily Eskridge plus. I don't know if I would even move Eskridge just to flip him. He might not like as much coming here because he's not going to get any more touches coming here, Randall. So, I mean, if he's dissuaded there, is he not going to be mad here coming here? Because we're going to still have Metcalf and Lockett as 1-2, and there's just not the third guy in this offense. If you got those guys healthy, is just not going to touch a lot with the way we use our tight ends as much as we use them. We're just not a heavy 3-wide team, really.
Yeah, and I think the Jets already said we're not going to trade him, so I seriously doubt anything happens there. It's his second year in the NFL, right?
Yes.
Yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing being like, I want to trade? It's my second year. He wasn't even like a super high profile player coming out necessarily. He wasn't a first round pick. So I don't like the fact that he's already kind of causing waves for a team that, by the way, is winning. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's an awful look, Brendan. It's an awful look for a young. Say nothing of a guy as a star doing it. If you're a young guy that's not yet established yourself in the league to do it, it's even worse at time. And it's, again, if you look to what, or is this guy going to be a problem into the future? It's like, I don't know if he's going to be a problem, but it's not a good sign. Now you're doing this when you have something to prove. What happens when you don't have anything to prove and you've gotten your contract? this is a little bit of a warning bell for me on that, Randall. So I'm kind of out on that all the way, even if he was on the market. I do think I agree with Brendan that New York's not probably throwing smoke screen up. They're not going to trade him because what are they going to get? He was a second round pick last year. I think the best you probably pull back from him now is a 4th or 5th rounder. We saw this with CJ Henderson going to the Jags last year. I think it was 1 year after he had been selected in top 20, and then they got like a 3rd round, 4th round pick for him, something like that.
I think it was a 4th, yeah.
Yeah, 4th. So it's like one of those things like the car, you buy the new car and you drive it off the lot, and they say it loses 40% of its value the second that you exit the lot. And that's very much kind of the truth here with this, with 2nd round pick. So it's just not in the best realm for them to make that deal, considering that you don't want to be that kind of team trading guys when they're at their lowest of values. This is a little bit why Brendan and I like moving Kelnick. Like, you move Jared Kelnick as a Mariners situation on this, but you move Jared Kelnick, he's at kind of his lowest value right now. Unless you have a team that's really valuing him with what they're giving you on a counter to it, you're almost just better to just let it ride out and see what happens with the situation.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's get to the big breaking news. Brendan's got, folks, we've got Brendan Nelson on the scene here at Hawks Nest Live with some breaking news. Brendan, you're down at Seahawks HQ. What are you hearing?
Okay, you sitting down?
Indeed, I am sitting down here in the booth with Emily.
All right. Okay, I have the terms of the trade here. Buckle up. So, 49ers acquire Christian McCaffrey.
Oh my God.
Panthers acquire, in this upcoming draft, the 49ers' 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, and a 2024 5th round pick. I thought they were going to give him away. I thought they were giving him away just to not have to pay him.
Ooh. It's getting hot inside San Francisco 49erville, I guess, huh?
Do they not pick until the 5th round? Because they don't have the Trey Lance pick.
Mm-hmm.
So they've traded every pick until the 5th round. This is insane for a guy made of glass.
This is an insane trade. I agree with you. I'm still kind of reeling here for a second, Brendan. I'm trying to gather my thoughts, like a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, and then a 5th that a year after from now. That's so, and I mean, it's acknowledging the fact that the teams trading here are saying, well, we as San Francisco are going to be at the end of these drafts. So when we trade you a 2nd round pick, it's essentially at the end of the 2nd round, and the 3rd round's at the end of the 3rd round, and the 4th round's at the end of the 4th round. So it's almost like you're turning over into the top half of the next round in the way the teams view them to a degree.
Except Jimmy Garoppolo's still their quarterback. They could end up being a mediocre team this year.
Well, that's the problem. That's where we come back to, Brendan, your and I guys' problem with that. You make this kind of trade, you make it like the Rams did last year with Von Miller, where you're a little further along, I think, in the league season at that point. You're a little more firmly established as to who you are, and you really see that finishing piece coming in there and doing it with Von Miller. Hard to see Christian McCaffrey being the finishing piece for me, my standpoint, because the fact, like you said, he's made of glass. He is Samuel L. Jackson. Number 2, you've gotten by with other running backs and been great with other running backs. Maybe he makes you uber great now because he's such a difference maker at the running back position. But that's where I go. But it's like the one place, it's like us with cornerbacks almost, Brendan. It's like, having Carroll take a top 5 cornerback when he can go find a 5th round Tariq Woolen or a 5th round Richard Sherman. Like, I would be going, if I'm the Niners, and looking at, I don't necessarily know what the deal would have been to be making to help them at that point, but I probably would have looked to address another position,
Mm-hmm. A little bit more information just to get the full picture here. Niners will owe McCaffrey $1 million this year.
Okay.
And 11.8 next year. So it pretty quickly becomes a big problem.
Wow. That's so much to give up, Brendan. That's so much to give up for a running back in this day and age.
Yeah, and one that's, like I said, made of glass.
They're going the Rams route. I guess have the Rams gotten into him a little bit? Is this the Ram effect? We're going to go for it like no other team goes for it in the now. To hell with our draft picks into the future. Go for broke, and if you don't go with us, if you ain't matching our energy, you're not going to keep up.
Maybe the guys in charge just feel like they're going to get fired no matter what unless they are in the Super Bowl. So they're just like, what do I care about these picks? I'm not going to get to use them. I'm going to get fired.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. That was my initial instinct with it, but then I was going, how could they be on this hot seat though? I mean, they've been in a Super Bowl. They were, a hair away this last year from getting back there again. They've looked like one of the best teams in the NFC this year to begin things. And
Agree,
you go,
agree.
okay. I mean, I'm like, how is that seat warm aside from the ownership's just going, well, maybe you guys are topped out, just getting really, 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 really close. And that's as far as you can really get. But hard for me to see the ownership there at that spot, though. It's not, I mean, there have been owners definitely who have gotten finicky. I mean, hell, this is the organization that let Harbaugh go, who had a 44-18 record in his
Yeah.
time there at San Francisco.
Yeah. I think that I personally believe that John Lynch, if they don't have a deep run this year, will get fired because of the Kinlaw pick and the Trey Lance pick. That's back-to-back complete disasters early in the first round. So I think he's done unless they go super deep. But Kyle, I would not even consider firing. So I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I guess that is a potential that they're looking at here, is that and certainly general managers will do this on their way out the door, that the second they feel it getting a little warm, they'll start flexing on future capital, because they're like, what the hell does it matter if I miss anyway? I'm out of here. So what difference does it make to me? They're not going to be looking at it really from the organization standpoint. But boy, as we turn this rebuild forward, Brendan, on the back of these moves that the Rams and 49ers have made towards their future, not this year, but their future, and with the assets we have in much difference to what they have, that can't help but give us some huge advantages as we move into the future with these three organizations kind of squaring off against each other a bit. Can it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with it if this is what they're going to do. If they're going to give all these picks away for a broken down running back, g- do more of that, please.
Yeah.
Trade your picks next year for Kevin White next, please. Do
Keep
it.
going. Yeah. Keep going all in like that for moves that are questionable. Love it. And same with the Rams. Keep tossing those picks around. Keep going now. Hopefully this will egg the Rams on now to go even harder with this trade deadline. They'll offer their 2027 first round pick at this point, like let them keep going, keep pushing, and we'll keep collecting and adding picks, and we'll just build the team organically, and we'll just be past these teams, not looking for the shortcut. And I get why they're doing it. They're elite teams. They're in that state right now, Brendan. Look, Niners are in the go for it mode. So it's understandable that you're going to make go for it moves, but make the right go for it moves. I didn't like that the Rams gave up the second and third round pick last year for a half season of Von Miller, but you could understand the devastating effect it would have on that defense, because now you double Donald, you're giving Von Miller single. There's not going to be the back to chip because you got the inside now on Donald. You're committing the resources. It's just, you could see how it was going to open things up, and it did. It played out that way when you saw it, especially with Floyd there, who's at least competent coming from the other side in that Rams defense. With this one, I go, okay, Christian's fast, and he'll be a fit in that, and they'll use running backs. The screen game will be devastating with McCaffrey there if he stays healthy, but what is he bringing in wins and losses to them as far as bottom line, Brendan? I mean, what does he add to them? 2 points a game?
Yeah, I'm just not convinced this Niners team is elite enough to be doing things like this. Like, this is something you do when maybe you get off to like a 5-1 start, and then your running back gets hurt, and you're like, oh no, we're gonna ruin this season because we don't have a good backup running back. Okay, do whatever it takes to get Christian McCaffrey. Okay, but they're 3-3. They kind of I think they got pretty savagely outplayed by the Falcons last week, and the Falcons are not a great team. They've already lost some games that they had no business losing. The monsoon game, that game against the Broncos, where Broncos did everything they could to hand the game to them, and they just didn't take it. I mean, you've still got Jimmy Garoppolo as your quarterback. Are you really going to go all in? It's like the Saints. The Saints kind of went all in this last offseason, right? We were talking about this. They pushed the pain forward and decided to go all in. They traded their future first round pick to get Trevor Penning. And I'm sitting here like, your quarterback is Jameis Winston, right? This is not the guy you go all in on.
No.
And look at them now. They're 2-5. Their season's basically over. It's not that bad, but Garoppolo's not the guy you go all in on like this.
No, it's not, and it's important that I do think it is important when you're in the elite stance of things, when you're truly a Super Bowl contending team, to know, okay, we are going to go for it and to go make the aggressive move, but to think it out. And I'll give our Hawks some shade on this. Like the Jimmy Graham move was not a think it out fully move, in my opinion. The Jamal Adams move wasn't a fully thought out move, in my opinion. They were more made in that reactionary state. This to me screams more of a reactionary state move that the Niners are making. I won't go on and fully call it desperation, Brendan, but it's got some hints of desperation for the position. Remember, they missed out on Trey Sermon, third round pick from last year. They've had some injuries at the position going into this year. One other thing I want to say on this, Brendan, not to harp on it too much, but the one thing to say on this Niner move, to look at it through the context of our lens on this, a lot of people talking about through this offseason with the Kenneth Walker pick about how running backs, just get them always in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. That's the only place to get them. Look at how the Niners are doing it. Look at how the Niners are getting it done. Well, the Niners have been through a lot of different running backs here over the last couple of years. They've had their share of injuries go through. They haven't been able to find a real stable guy there at the position, even come close to it. It seems like they get 7 or 8 games out of a guy and then they're on to the next one. That's where it can show you that if you don't just sometimes get a little bit of the prime guy or put some resources into getting it and always thinking you're going to get the running back at bargain basement prices and that this is what the analytic people are telling you to do, you can get bit on the butt with that. And this is them getting a bit on the butt now with having to make this kind of move, and why I think you and I were both, I don't want to speak, I speak for you sometimes on this, but this is why I believe we are both on this point of saying, this is why we're both in favor of Kenneth Walker in the second, not the first, but in the second, because you are truly getting a difference maker at the position at that point, which is hard to find, as you see by the Niners making this kind of move for a guy who is highly injury prone, to put it mildly. Is that fair, Brendan?
Yeah. It's going to cost a little bit of draft capital, but the thing is, it's not going to cost money. Like this CMC move, it's not just the draft picks; it's the money.
Yeah.
That is significant. Now, for the moment, the Niners don't have an expensive quarterback; they can get away with this stuff a little bit more. But who wants to be paying big money to a running back who gives you like 9 games a year? And I think that may be what McCaffrey ends up with.
Yeah. And the same thing happened to us. The thing is this, if you go, it's in the bloodlines. His father played for the Denver Broncos in the 80s, faced our Seahawks quite a bit, won some championships with the Broncos into the 90s, had a very good career for the Denver Broncos, but his body broke down over time. He was a guy that really, it seemed like every one of those guys, every catch he made seemed to be like he was in a car crash. And I wonder if a little bit of that same thing's going on with a guy in McCaffrey. He's not the biggest guy, Brendan, is he? I mean, I know he's got the picture where he looks all yoked out and somebody's like, he's probably 5'11", 210 pounds probably when you get to game day. I mean, it's running backs were a little bit that size, and man, they used him up in those first couple of years. He had the 100 catches a year, I think, and then he still had almost 270 carries or something in those first 3 seasons into the year. Like, it's going to wear a guy out. You can't permanently wear him out when you use him up for that's a 3-season period that they did that over.
Right.
Very interesting, man. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm if I'm a Niners fan, I'm not happy right now. So as a Seahawks fan, I am happy.
Yeah, I'm loving life with this. I'm loving life when we're able to make moves where we come out smelling like roses, like we seem to be on this Russell Wilson situation or this last draft, and now we've gone versus other teams that you look around you making stuff where they're starting to really try to scramble in their approach. A lot better position to be over here than over there. Jesse Lund with a $2 donation. Thank you, Jesse. Says, if Sean Payton goes to the Chargers, rest in peace, world. He's the belt the ball right now, isn't he, Brendan? Mr. Payton?
Yeah. And let's think about this for a second. Okay. He won the Super Bowl in 2009 after the 2009 season. Has not been back since. Made the NFC title a couple times, but has not made it back to the Super Bowl. What's the difference between him and a guy like Pete Carroll, who made the Super Bowl more recently, made 2 Super Bowls? If Pete Carroll were to suddenly be a surprise retirement this offseason, I don't think you'd see 12 to 15 teams clamoring all over like, oh, we got to give this guy $100 million to get him out of retirement. He'll fix our team and make us the best team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting it out there, maybe.
No, I hear you.
Like, is he like they had those 3 straight years where they had losing records with Breeze. I think they went 7-9 3 straight seasons. It was bad. They only really became a good team again when their defense got super tricked out. So I don't know. You feel me on this one?
I do feel you a little bit on it, but I'm also more probably at the end of the day landing. I don't land 100% in the other realm, but I land more in the realm of saying that he is a top flight coach even at this point, not just for reputation's sake. I think context always matters for me, and that you can look at it with a broad stroke and say, well, neither been to a Super Bowl, so therefore here's an equivalency, or here's an equivalency to something we wouldn't value that much if we were looking at it on the other side, like you're saying with Carroll. But I think there's a couple of things that factor into that. First off, Drew Brees was one of the predecessor quarterbacks at the position for really taking up a lot of the salary cap very much in those early 2000s. And he put those Saints teams behind the ball. And it was a little bit before teams had enough data to really understand you spend this much money on a quarterback, you can't build the rest of the team out. And the Saints scrambled and tried to make their way around that a little bit. They had a couple of other things that kind of fixed back against that, but it made it hard for them to build their roster there, in my opinion, through that 12, 13, 14 period. They were able to do pretty good with it. They got relatively far, but they weren't quite good enough to really get them that. They were like a couple players away from getting into like that contention to where they could be the number 1 seed, Brendan, where they get to play at home rather than having to play on the road like they did with us, 2-3 times in that 10-year period where they had to come to Seattle, which was the opposite of an environment that was advantageous for Drew Brees. You put him in the rain, the wind, the cold, his arm's going to suck and he's going to look horrible. He's going to look like he's not an NFL quarterback in those kind of conditions. Then you also have, remember, the 2 situations that also go on in that 10-year period where they've had 2 of their playoff runs ended by horrific calls. 2 of the worst calls in the decade occurred to end their seasons, right? The Rams PI that went uncalled, and then the tight end for the Vikings pushes off, catches the touchdown to finish him off in that playoff, I think a year later.
Vikings still would have won that game.
Huh?
I'm just saying it. Vikings still would have won that game.
I mean, maybe, but it's hard that you have your year ended by a big official call and the blatant call that's right there out. I mean, his arms extend out. He pushes the guy away. It wasn't as blatant as it could get. Maybe not, but it definitely didn't. It allowed him to score and get the touchdown and allowed them to win. At least on the Rams one, it was brutal. And then they had the Hail Mary one where the safety basically looked down the year before that. Is that on Sean Payton there? That his safety is rookie safety basically. So I look at versus Coach Carroll, this 10-year run you look at him having there, or at least the last 6-7 years, for instance, the Saints have had way more further success into the playoff runs than we've had over that period, I feel like. And so it's just a little bit more to me of he's getting by with less. That's while he's done that, Brendan. He's done that while Drew Brees' arm's gone into the toilet, and that's that he's shown a willingness to evolve. I know I'm making this a long-winded answer, but he's showing a willingness to kind of evolve and move forward a little bit, where Carroll's been little more rigid, historically speaking, in his approach, a little less willing to move, which is why I'm a little more maybe out on him with that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think I agree. I think I know who I would prefer as a head coach. I'm just saying that, Sean Payton gets a lot of attention for a guy who hasn't made a Super Bowl in over a decade. I've said this before. There are 15 teams out there that have fan bases that are convinced that Sean Payton is the only thing keeping them from the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he hasn't made a Super Bowl in a minute with the team that he had that was pretty good. So I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm not as certain that he's necessarily going to get. I'm not in that place for sure. I'm not like, if we got him, we'd be in the Super Bowl at all. No. I like him as a coach. I think he's one of the better prospect coach out there. Part of it too, I think, Brendan, is that there's not a lot of good coaches just out there on the market right now. Like guys that are just sort of waiting for that opportunity to come back into it, who have had a good track record of success. It's kind of lean. Like if you're going to be looking for a coach this offseason and his name's not Sean Payton, who are the names you're going to in your mind? And I think so. It's a little bit of it's a lazy approach from some folks on that too, to just go, okay, well, Payton, well, who else? I don't know who else is out there. Can we get Tony Dungy out a retirement? Can we talk him out of it? Is he ready for maybe one more role? No.
Mike Holmgren.
Yeah. I know Mike can still draw up a play. Damn it. Come on. So there's a little bit of that going on, but I think Sean Payton with Herbert would be deadly, Brendan.
Yeah, I agree.
With that, and they've already got an offensive line starting to be put in place. Once Zion Johnson develops, Rashawn Slater comes back, you get Lindsley back in there. That's going to be a line long term that could come together if they can get some of the other parts in place. And boy, with him, that would be. If I'm Payton, okay, how about this, Brendan? If you're Sean Payton and you got your pick of the litter of kind of places you could go to that are going to be feasibly open this offseason, as a head coaching, where would you go?
I mean, the Chargers is very appetizing. Admittedly, I think they have all their picks too. They didn't. Well, yeah, I think they have
Mhm.
all their picks in this
You're
upcoming
right.
draft because the Khalil Mack trade was for a second round pick last year, if I recall correctly. So that's got to be near the top of the list. I can't see unless Zach Taylor gets canned. Maybe that Bengals team looks pretty sweet. I don't think Zach Taylor's any good. If they don't make the playoffs this year, I wonder.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think it would have to be for me. Well, all those teams you mentioned, I can kind of bring up a big distraction. You go Cowboys, Jerry Jones, Bengals, cheap Mike Brown as an owner.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
can
that's
kind of go
big.
through some things on some of those where if I go to the Chargers, I go, well, you're in LA, big market. You got a great quarterback, great line, interesting defensive pieces on the other side of the ball. I could see it. I could see it. Hawks Nest 2.0 with a $2 donation. Like your name there. Says 49ers getting fleeced. You love to see it. Hey, they are.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty close to a fleecing, wouldn't you, Brendan?
Yeah. Do you remember last week when the announcement from the Panthers was they expected multiple first round picks for McCaffrey?
I did hear a little bit of like that. Yes.
Yeah, I read that and I thought to myself, you know you guys are just going to have to give them away, right? Like nobody wants that. And well, I guess the truth was somewhere in the middle.
Well, where's the track record of a running back being traded before the deadline going for this kind of value?
A running was Trent Richardson a first round pick at the deadline or was that in the offseason?
That was the offseason. I mean, he wasn't traded. I don't think he was. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the one. Man, that's going back far though, Brendan. And I can't
Yeah.
come up with anything that's even close. I do think that was an off-season one. I don't think there's been one at a trade deadline because that's right. That's kind of you're built in your point, right? Is that if you're moving a guy at the trade deadline like this and he's a running back, historically speaking, you're moving a guy and it's like, here's a fifth rounder for this guy. Here, just take this. That's usually what you're pulling. I can't think of a guy getting this much. I didn't know McCaffrey still had kind of the rep through the league like that. I maybe just you know what this is now. I think about it, Brendan. I got it now. I just figured it out. I just figured it out.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan goes back with Broncos head coach, right? Because he goes back to his dad's as the Broncos head coach, right? I just mentioned his dad who played for the Broncos.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of, I bet this is Shanahan pounding the table for this one. And this is the family allegiances coloring his vision of it versus just a pure personnel assessment. Boom.
So it's more nepotism.
Boom. That's it. See?
That's what
I
we're
mean,
getting
that's
at
how
here.
that explains crazy a lot more than they just thought he's still that much of a badass. That's all I'm gonna say
Yeah.
on that.
Now, with that in mind, I'm really interested to see what Grant Cohn thinks of it because the only reason why he's in the position he's in is because of nepotism as well. So, is he going to call it out or is he going to let that one go because he knows that nobody benefits from nepotism like Grant Cohn?
They go, no, people, they earn it and everybody wants to put it on other things, but you actually earn it and everybody wants to add it into other stuff and go, okay, so yeah, okay. Okay, so my dad knows a publisher. Okay. That doesn't mean I don't still earn it. Snail with a $5 donation, and thank you, Hawksnest 2.0. Snail with the $5 dono says Lynch trading a fifth, sixth, and seventh to Seattle for Jones so he can stay home next year.
I would do it. I would certainly do it.
Yeah, go for it. I'm all in. Let's get while the getting's good.
Yeah, there are a couple teams that could use a zone corner, so I think there's going to be a little bit of a market for Sydney.
Yeah, especially because I think Seattle's going to look at whatever they get for him being bonus. So it's
Yeah.
not going to be a real tough negotiation. If there's somebody that basically picks up their phone and calls Schneider, he's going to probably pull the trigger on the deal. I think they'll probably wait as close as they can until Trey Brown gets back from injury, though, to do that.
Yeah, I think you're probably. Apparently, he's like a week or two away, though, so it's pretty close.
Very close.
And by the way, a couple people have reminded me that the Niners still have some third round picks because of the coaching hires of like McDaniel and
Right.
they had a couple other guys as well.
Right. Yeah. That's true. So I guess they had a little bit of house money to spend here, Brendan. It still is a little bit of a silly trade. It still is a little bit of one you shake your head at though, and you go, really, guys, like that you're going to go that hard with it. Like, do you? I think they're not going to look back at fondly on this deal, Brendan. And they've got, you said $11 million next year, and you mentioned they're not spending anything on a quarterback, but can they walk into next year just going, let's ride with Trey Lance, and we know we'll be fine with him, and we'll just get some whatever backup at that point for a roster you have going forward, for a roster that should be theoretically Super Bowl contending worthy.
It's Brock Purdy season.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, and that's the thing is now they can't even go and draft this is what this has also removed them of, Brendan, is you got this quarterback rich draft through probably the first 3, maybe 4 rounds here. I guess they're going to try to maybe grab one with one of those 3rd round picks there and think that that's where they're going to pick their guy up then as insurance for Trey.
Yeah, but who are you getting down there that's ready to go? Devin Leary,
McKee,
Marcus May, the North Carolina guy. I think his name is like Marcus May or something. It's not. I know it's a good quarterback class, but I'm not excited to get a 3rd round guy and start him day one.
No, well, what if he comes in and he's looking better than Trey because Trey hasn't had a chance to develop? He still looks raw and rough because these injury situations and not playing any. I mean, that's what these quarterbacks tell you, is that you can only learn so much from the sideline. He's now had another year fully removed, not out there. So what if that 3rd rounder comes in, looks just a little bit better, but the position's still not good enough to even be meeting the spot where it is with Garoppolo there, right? It's like, here's Lance, here's the guy who's next to him, but here's where at least where Garoppolo was getting him from a performance standpoint. Which then now we get back to desperation, Brendan, right? Because now they get to training camp next year and they're like, oh, we got to go make now this next desperate trade for the future picks to get the quarterback in here. It's where you start chasing your tail on that stuff rather than being where you think you are. It's like, no, we're just making go for it moves. No, you're being reactionary, right? Like we were with the Sheldon Richardson trade, where it's like, here's the 2nd round for this, or the Clowney trade, where it's like, okay, I like the trade, but it was totally on a reactionary basis to you not getting stuff done in the offseason. And that's not where success lies with making these kind of deals.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bizarre circumstance. And I mean, if you're the Niners, you better win the Super Bowl this year. Anything less is just like, what was the point?
Yeah. I mean, if you're one and done, like you said, that's probably he's out, the general manager. I mean, if they anything short of making a deep run, these kind of moves put you in the spotlight of like, you made these moves to get more from the now and the interim, not for the future. You can't come back as a general manager and go, no, Lance was for like 3 years from now. We were really looking, we have the roster now, Super Bowl wise. We might not have that 3 years from now. What are you doing? Well, I just,
Yeah, and in a few days, the Niners are going to have a losing record because they're playing the Chiefs this week. So they've got a hole to dig themselves out of.
Yeah, indeed they do. Indeed they do. Thank you, Snail, though. Again, $5 donation. Mumbles with a $5 donation. Thank you, Mumbles. 49ers just needed their next sacrifice of blood to the blood gods is all. Nothing to see here.
There's probably going to be some blood with Christian McCaffrey out there.
That's one thing you'll get is the blood. And they'll be like, hey, do I need a knife? No, we don't need a knife. We got McCaffrey. Just send him out on a play, and after he gets tackled, we'll have some. McCaffrey see, there you go. Come on, Matt. Come over here. Just drip on that. Okay, we're good. We're good. Thank you, Mumbles. Robbie Red with a $2 donation says Juju Smith-Schuster or Drake London, week 7 PPR.
I kind of feel like that Falcons-Bengals game is going to be a shootout, so I want to say Drake London.
Drake London's been very well looked at by PFF this year so far, and he looked all right in the game with us too. Wasn't dominant, but he looked solid. He's been actually better than I thought he was going to be in the league, to be honest with you so far. I thought he was going to be a little bit one-trick pony-ish, and he's been all right. So I would definitely go with London. Juju's been okay, I think, with the
Chiefs. It feels very random whether or not he'll have a game or not. It's not like a guy who you can just throw out there and everything is going to be perfect.
Yeah, well said on that. So London, we're going London. Daniel Bailey with a $2 donation. Thank you, Daniel. Says, we need to sign Geno to make sure the Niners don't. Laughing my ass off. I was kind of thinking that a second ago as I was saying that, Brendan. That would be the deal that would make sense to them, is you're saving the money on the quarterbacks and you sign him to a $20 million deal a year. And
$20 million ain't getting it done.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Unless he plays the way he played against Arizona the whole rest of the year. I don't think 20 million is getting it done.
Mm.
I think you're talking, I threw out 25, 26. And if he has more big games down the road, I think it's going to be long term too. I don't think you're getting out of this super cheap. I don't think you're convincing Geno to take like a cheap 1 year deal to try to go win the Super Bowl, which honestly, with the way Geno's playing this year, the Niners got him. I think they could, but it's going to cost you something.
So, I could see the fit with the Niners, and it could be up at that cost. I do wonder if some of the depression of the cost will come into play from the fact, though, that there isn't as many teams vying for his services because of the particular year at play with the available quarterbacks that'll be out there. And maybe there is. I mean, a Baltimore team, if they were to move on from a Lamar and want to be like, we don't want to say, bam, you go to Geno, and they might feel comfortable. There could be this that does pop up. Where I mean, yeah, if you're looking at if you're the Ravens right now, Brennan, you're going, okay, we're due to pay the piper now. We've gone 5 years deep on Lamar. Absolutely have to pay him now. Can't push this off another year. Don't want to franchise him. I got to pay Lamar on a $55 million per year deal with all that guaranteed money, like 4 or 5 years, Brennan, or I can give Geno Smith a 4-year deal where he's making less than maybe half per year on average. Your position makes sense. Your position makes sense on that as far
I
as
would
going that route.
100% do that. 100%. I would rather have Geno on that contract than Lamar on the 300 million contract.
Yeah.
Although with the way Lamar's playing, that offer's going down a little bit, I think. So he may not end up getting the 55.
Maybe not. It's a tough one with this though, because of the inflation and the cap going up, and 50 million this year was not 50 million from a year ago or 2 years ago. It's like that would be down at more of a 40 million rate. So, maybe we saw this with the Dak Prescott, who was at one time trying to be that next guy to push the mark up and ended up having to sign a little bit below the top end value spot in that mark, but it's still going to be significant, still going to be very close to double the mark of what Geno gets. If not that spot, it'll be very close. I mean, even if he comes back in less than, it's probably still 43, 44. Yeah. And again, he's going to want that guaranteed money too. That's the part with me, Lamar. He wants that Deshaun Watson thing with the guaranteed aspect of it, not simply the big high value of the contract. And that's the part that's going to make the Ravens really, really nervous. He has a right to ask for it. I know why he is. But if that would freak me out, Brendan, to sign Lamar to that kind of deal right now.
Yeah, and don't forget, if the Niners sign Geno, they're just going to be running QB draw 10 times a game, and he's going to get hurt. That's what they do.
Yeah, he doesn't. Shanahan's too drawn in by that quarterback power. It's wide open. It's just wide open there every time. Just all he's got to do is just run through the middle. But the coach, there's 2 linebackers there. He'll find his way. Coach, the quarterback's foot's turned sideways. Damn it, he didn't find his way.
I have faith in you to do it though. I had no faith in that last guy, but you can do it.
It'll be different this time. It'll be different, Geno. You know better. Your feet don't plant as firmly. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I love where you're thinking though, man. I think it's a possibility. That's for sure. The Snail with the $2 donation. Thank you, Snail. So speaking of quarterback Hooker, Hendon Hooker is getting a lot of love right now. Boy, is he indeed. Fun fact of life, Brendan, on this one. Just one of those fun. He's actually older than Justin Herbert.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm aware of the age. I can live with the age. I did read some stuff last week that indicated he is a pure one-read quarterback right now. He makes one read, and if it's not there, he takes off, which not great for a 26-year-old quarterback, or maybe he's 25 right now. I still really like him, though. I will say this, though. A big part of the appeal is that you could have gotten him in the 2nd or 3rd round. That's not happening now.
Okay, so you think he's going 1st round with that age and with that one read kind of situation going on? I'm torn on this as well, because we don't have the last quarterback who was a very old quarterback was, I believe, Brandon Weeden.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's been another one in that vicinity of recent years that's been that old, and he is indeed kind of up in that range. You think it's first going though?
See how it's not a 1st rounder. I mean, Brandon Weeden went in the 1st round too, and I know that's a cautionary tale now, but isn't Hendon Hooker much better in college than Brandon Whedon ever was, like in terms of results.
I mean, Whedon balled Oklahoma State. I think he really balled. He had Des Bryant he was throwing to. So I think if I remember right. So
Yeah,
like
that sounds right.
he was really, 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 really going nuts. I don't know on that one. I think Whedon had a pretty the Whedon was a baseball player, which is why he was old. So he came to things a little late there with that because of that. That was his reasoning. I think Hendon's better though because he's got the mobility. Whedon was, of course, just a pure statue back there from the position. Hendon can move, so you can use that one read. That's the thing. If the guy's one read, at least if he can be an upper level mobility guy, you can work around that a little bit.
Let's think this through. Stroud, Young, Levis go in the top 10. Almost certainly, you think, right?
I'm not as sure as Young, but I think he goes top 15 and not top 10. So,
okay. After that, who are the top quarterbacks that are not Hooker?
Jefferson.
KJ, yeah.
Um,
It's probably Anthony Richardson if he comes out, which he may not.
Richardson, if he does come out, it's the
DJU over in Clemson,
Ugalele,
who may not come out.
Maybe Cam Ward, depending on where you see him. Maybe McKee with Stanford, where you see him. The Mississippi State kid,
Will Rogers.
Will Rogers.
I like Devin Leary, but he's now hurt out for the year, so he's going to be a late round guy.
Right.
Tanner McKee is not going to be a first round pick. He's not having a great year.
No, he's going to be middle rounds as it stands right now. So, I mean, I guess he goes in the first round to be Brendan. If you're really thinking you're getting the 5th-year deal where you're like, I get his prime basically at that point. You're thinking like, even if he's rough, I get his 26 through 31-year-old seasons. So I'm getting the best of Hendon at that point, which maybe the draw into that first round versus if I'm a second rounder, it's 3 years. And then we got to come back to the table almost certainly, especially if I'm balling out.
And the last point I want to make, how many teams need a quarterback this offseason? I'm looking at the list here. You've got, if the Giants let Daniel Jones go, then them. Washington needs a quarterback. Carolina, maybe Minnesota, maybe Chicago, Detroit, maybe Tampa Bay, maybe Atlanta, maybe New Orleans. And I would even throw a team like the Texans in there as well. I don't think they're totally sold into Mills. You've got the Colts. I guess we shouldn't even say the Dolphins right now because Tua is going to play this week, but part of me is expecting him to retire and leave the Dolphins high and dry with no quarterback. So a lot of teams need a quarterback. If the top 3 go in that top 10, Levis, Stroud, Young, who are you going to take in the number 12, number 13 slot if you need a quarterback other than Hendon Hooker? I'm not really sure I'm seeing it.
I think you run into a situation like last year at that point where it's just there'll be a lot of guys taking second, third round, but you're going to see it more into the depths of second, third round. Then you'll see it into the first, them pushed up because of the scarcity of the position. Mm-hmm. That'd be where I would see it going, because that's where NFL teams have been recently and how they've done that. It seems like is that they're getting better about not just moving up. I think too, because it's looking at that 5th-year option going that thing's a misnomer, because yes, there's a 5th-year option there, but if the quarterback's doing well, more often than not, these guys like Kyler Murray did this offseason are going to be like, okay, 3rd year's done. Pay me. They don't. So now teams go, well, okay, it's not really what it was, is it? It's sort of a little bit different there. But you're right. There are going to be a lot of teams looking. I think some of those teams you're going to see a little bit of like musical chairs, right? Where some guys go from one spot to the other to fill in the spot that's created in this area. There'll be places like the Colts where Ryan's just kind of probably done, or Tampa Bay where Brady's just kind of done. But then I think there'll be other quarterbacks who will kind of move around, like maybe Lamar. There was one other one I was thinking in there that you mentioned of those teams that had a guy who would probably be going somewhere. And someone would probably be like, oh, we'll take him. Though it's slipping.
Justin Fields, I guess.
Fields. I think Fields, somebody will give Fields, I think, a chance with that one, because they'll give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. So I think that'll be a move some team makes to say, oh, this will be like Washington. Obviously they just did this with Wentz. They would strike me as the type of team that would try that, where they go, rather than drafting, we'll grab this because we don't like who we have, sitting here. So he's another guy that can move. But your point still stands. There's going to be a plethora of teams out there that are going to need quarterbacks, and there's only so many. It could cause Hendon to get picked. Boy, he's to be that old to be a little bit still kind of rough at the position to a degree. He's played amazing this year, Brendan. I mean, he's balled out of his mind. That's the thing with it too, is he's played so good, beating Alabama. I mean, they're tearing the goalpost down and throwing the water. Like it is kind of one of those signature years. You're kind of winning me over here with the point, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm coming to your side of this. I think he probably does get there.
If a guy like Anthony Richardson was in this draft, I would believe that he would go as like the fourth quarterback, and then KJ, and then maybe even someone like a DJU. But the fact that those guys may not come out, combined with the fact that some of these guys kind of had failure to launch this year in college football, we were kind of hoping, hey, maybe Tanner McKee is going to be the guy who launches himself up, Jay Cutler style, or maybe it's going to be somebody like Devin Leary. It didn't quite get there, so I think it's happening.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't shock me at this point. This is what happens with these years in college. The final year will dictate the ultimate where the guys go. But the thing that'll be his big thing that you're going to hear just battered over and over again is age, and whether or not he gets the benefit of the doubt with that or not, as far as these teams look at him. And that'll be it'll be interesting. Like I said, Whedon's the only one I can think of, Brendan. I can't go back further than that and say, well, there's Whedon and then there's this other guy. It's Whedon, and then I got nobody else. And he was, I think, real old. He's like 28, I think.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that was ridiculous. That was the Browns.
He was literally like already a great grandfather when he got to the NFL. Like, it's literally, yeah. Sam the Great with the $2 donation. Thank you, Sam, for the $2 donation. Says the NFC West is going to be a dog fight. Go Hawks. Go Hawks. And indeed, the Cardinals tonight knocking off the Saints. So the division, and we've got everybody with a minimum, I think, of 3 wins in this division, right, Brendan?
Yeah. Cardinals are now at 3.
So again, they keep telling us that we ain't the toughest in the roughest no more, Brendan. But we still sometimes appear when it's all said and done, looking back at the division, when you get to the end of the year, go, yeah, we're still kind of the most toughest and roughest. I don't know if I could put it on the AFC West at this point so far this year. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's not amazing, but it's competitive.
Yeah, and probably the NFC East is probably your best division so far this year out the gate. Thank you, though. Appreciate the dono. Mark, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, hey, guys, now that Christian McCaffrey is traded to the Niners, do you guys think that Akers goes to the Chiefs, or is it the next trade to happen in general?
I got to tell you, I don't really care where Akers goes because I don't think he has anything left. The ACL tear just
Achilles.
Achilles, excuse me. Even worse.
Even worse.
I don't think he's got anything left.
Yep. I lean in a little bit. I know he looked pretty good coming back last year for a moment there when he first came back. But the fact that they're not finding a way to get him on the field right now this year, I can't just go, well, it's pass protection issues. He can't pass. That could be a factor, but you'd still find a way. Who's got the guy who had the juice he had in that rookie year before he sustained that injury in training camp the next year. You'd find a way to utilize that guy one way or another. And the Achilles injury is one of those ones that when you look at it, you got to be very careful of saying, when you see a guy go down to that, oh, he'll absolutely bounce back to what he was. He'll just come back. Modern science so much further ahead than they were 30 years ago. Kind of, but not on this necessarily, not as much on this. It can still be one of those injuries that players will tell you it's like walking with a boot on your leg after you have the surgery, even once you're recovered. And when you're running back, having that it's even worse than if, let's say you're a lineman, Brendan, if you're an offensive defense, you could probably get through that if you're a lineman, but if you're that running back, that's got to be so quick to cut and whatnot. I don't know. I don't see the Chiefs going. The Chiefs are kind of set with where they're at that position right now. Isaiah Pachenko, and they got still the hyphen kid there who's from LSU is still running there. So I mean, I can't see them making that move. I could see the Bills. I could see the Bills.
I mean, maybe the Broncos could, right?
Broncos could too. They they don't have any faith in Gordon right now. They're only going to Gordon because they're like.
Did you see the quote from Gordon today?
No,
I didn't realize the dude was such a bad 5-letter word.
Oh, his body language has been miserable on the sideline. The telecast is getting all of the mileage out of it can on those games, Brendan. They'll cut to him as much as they can. and he's got the pouty face, and he's even doing like he knows they've gone, okay, go to Gordon. And he's like, okay, do this shaking the head, slump the shoulders, like he's on and acting like they've said end scene. And he's like, okay, show how mad I am. And you go, dude, you fumbled 20 times this year. What do you want me to do?
And the media was talking to him after his meeting with Hackett today, where he got named the starter again. And somebody asked him, like, did you receive an adequate explanation for why you were benched for the last 3.5 quarters of the game? And he was like, yeah, I guess. It was like, okay, now is not the time for you to be real. You need to be following the playbook of player talking to media cliches right now. This is not the time for you to be acting like this.
Yeah. You can see the implosion beginning on the locker room of the Broncos. It's not just with Gordon. He's certainly a part of it in there with this, but I mean, there's that picture, the meme picture of him a couple of weeks ago, right, Brendan, where he does this, like if you were Russell in the picture and I was Melvin, and he's doing this move.
Yeah, that was after he had the fumble. So
yeah,
it's like,
that was after his.
You're not,
like,
you're not the person
he's
who
looking
needs
at
to
Russ
be.
like he's the problem.
Yeah.
Like the gall, in my opinion, like, not that he's not like, but dude, you ain't helping here either, bro. Like, come on. But yeah, you saw that the sidelines, Brendan. I wish I could have read those lips on those guys. The sideline we talked about in the last show in the Monday night game, just those Bronco receivers, you could just see them over there chirping about something going on. I'm like, boy, if they're doing this actively, remember we had Hamler pounding his helmet a couple of weeks ago into the turf. You don't usually see guys that, I don't know, animated about this stuff. It's usually behind closed doors is how they tend to try to keep this stuff.
Yeah. If Gordon gets benched in this game against the Jets, or if he fumbles again, that is going to light a fuse. I have to admit, I'm kind of rooting for it. I just want to see what happens.
I do
because
too.
it's going to be biblical. Like he's acting like this after already having had days to think about how bad he came off on Monday night. Like they even said, like, okay, you're starting this week, right? He gave you the starting job, so everything's cool now, right? And he was like, I started last week. We all saw how that worked out. It's like, man, you need to learn from Russell Wilson on how to deal with the media.
Yeah, exactly. Now this time a little bit for more of that, buddy. Like, or take some ownership again. Like, what do you expect? You're gonna drop the ball 20 times and then you just keep getting trotted out there for the hell of it? Like, that's not how it works. Like, you're running back. One of the most important things is you hold the ball. You don't turn it over. Just tone deaf. But that's why I think there's like an energy in that building right now that's kind of going in that direction where it's like, it's okay to be this way because everybody's kind of sensing where this is shifting and heading towards as a general direction, which once again, Brendan, I'm going to be posting my own. I know you just did a video, by the way, that video is doing really good, but I'm gonna do my own little video on why this isn't going better, worse. This is going to go in this direction in the future. This is where this is going for this season. It's not getting better for this Bronco team, and for a variety of reasons, but this is one of them because that team is not a team right now. It's a team that's going to it's only a matter of time for that defense starts piping up going, hey, we're doing our part over here. Every single week we're going out here laying it on the line. When is the offense, when are you going to start holding up your end of the bargain here? Can't help but not happen at some point.
Yeah, I couldn't believe the end of that Monday night game after the botched punt return. And on the 3 plays the Chargers ran after getting the fumbled punt, Broncos defense was getting deep backfield penetration on every play. And I was thinking to myself, man, if I was on that defense, I would just sit down at the snap. I would be like, okay, I'm done. I've done everything I can. You guys can't even pick up a first down in overtime. I'm just going to sit here until they get in the end zone.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one thing to say, well, I'll have the strong mindset to counter that through first couple of games of a season, but you start getting to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games into a year of that stuff, week after week after week, and you have no room for margin of error. And the offense is just completely looking like, they're just that they've become stupefied almost across the board. Yeah, you're going to get mad. It's human nature at that point. You're going to start to get to a point of this is BS. This is absolute crap because now I start to look bad. It's like the PFF scores, it's like the longer you're on the field, sometimes the worse your score starts to get because some of your snaps accumulate and you just get tired. And that's what happens. Like, these guys know that and they're going to be aware of it. And we'll see. But it's, again, one of the reasons why, Brendan, we're going to end up, to me right now, it's minimum top 10 first round pick with I'm like a weather forecaster, Brendan. Like, there's a good chance of at least partly sunshiny skies tomorrow with the top 10 pick, but it could also become pure sunshine with a top 5 very easily as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Jeffrey, this is with a $5 donation. Thank you, Jeffrey. He says all these draft picks for one of the weakest first round talent draft classes in years. Just our luck. There's Will Anderson and Levis. That's it. I mean, it's kind of early.
Do not agree with that at all. CJ Stroud, is CJ Stroud in the conversation for greatest college quarterback of all time? If you look at his numbers, if you look at the way he plays, if you look at the success the team has had, isn't he in the conversation?
I suppose you could put him into the conversation. It's such a list of so many guys that have been, I mean, there's guys you have in there that are like 4-year starters with brilliance, that whereas with him, he'll have 2 years of, I think, upper level production, right? So it's like, yeah, he'll have one of the greatest 2-year runs, I think. But if you go over college career with so many guys that started even from their freshman year through, he might have a hard time competing into that realm of things with those guys necessarily. Yeah. But he's playing outstanding football. He's probably going to end up being picked over Levis, if merely for the fact that he is so young doing it where he's doing it now versus Levis, who is a good 2 to 3 years older than the kid. That's going to be maybe enough to do it. But if we ended up with him, I wouldn't be. He's going to be. I think he's a legit talent, isn't he, Brendan?
Oh yeah. I think Carolina is going to end up with the number 1 pick because they're terrible and they're blowing it up, and I don't see how they pass on Stroud.
Over the Bears?
The Bears. Yeah, I think the Panthers are going to finish worse than the Bears.
That's fair enough. It certainly is possible. I think those are the two teams duking it out, in my opinion.
The Bears have 2 wins, and they really should have won that Thursday night game last week where the receivers just decided they were going to drop all of Justin Fields' game-winning touchdown passes. So I don't know. That's not a complete dumpster fire. Carolina is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I think, Jeffrey, it's a little early. I would love to be able to counter you with a whole bunch of names where I can say, well, there's this guy, there's that guy. I mean, I'll say, Jalen Carter is a legitimate top 15 first-round pick in any draft. I believe that what I saw from Miles Murphy out of Clemson would be a top 15 pick in any draft. So those are just some of the initial guys I've looked at. I may not have as much of the stacking of depth of last year's one, where last year really the second tier was the beefy part. We may not have that beefy second tier, but I don't know that the first tier is necessarily going to be as bad. And let's not forget, Jeffrey, this little fact. John Schneider now has picked 4 times in the top 15 in his career. And it's still a sample size, but it's also worth noting that in all 4 of those picks, he's hit. All 4 of those picks, he has not missed. You put him in the barrel that close to the prime talent, he's going to pull a prime talent out.
I agree. And don't forget about Keely Ringo, by the way. I know he's a corner, but somebody's going to take him in that top 10. I think
I'm okay with going that route with this, Brendan, even with what we've got with maybe, thinking Trey Brown doing. I like the thought process of getting a prime corner over on that other spot of things with Tariq, because one of the things that hurt you with Richard Sherman, and it wasn't Richard Sherman's fault or anybody's fault, but it was that when you got Richard Sherman paid and he was on that side, and he was still playing for a couple of years before the injury. Teams just went, okay, yeah, we're not going to throw over there. We're just going to go after this side then and attack this side. Well, what if you could pull away from both sides and you could go, there's nowhere to run for you now. Where are you going to run? You got left or right? Where you want to go? Are you going to just sit in the middle of the defense all day? Well, we'll press that. We'll compound and press that down. So I'm okay with that. That's why Brendan and I like the best player available on the board thing too. Well, we got to have a middle linebacker. Well, we definitely need a 3-4 defensive end. Well, what if we have a Derek Stingley, Sauce Gardner type talent at cornerback sitting in that first pick as well? Are you opposed to it?
I'm not going to completely throw it out.
No,
I would not put it high on my list, but if he's the best player available, then he's the best player available.
Yeah. As I always say, if it's that guy at a 95, rating as a prospect, and you've got an 88 guy at defensive end or middle linebacker, I'll take the 95 cornerback all day in that point. 283, and thank you again, Jeffrey. 283 with the $2 donation. Thank you, 283. Brian Burns, you are a Seattle Seahawk. There we go.
If McCaffrey cost what he cost, what is Burns going to cost? That's what I'm thinking right now. I got to be honest.
It's a great point, man. If they got that out of McCaffrey, I mean, he's cost a lot of money. He's got the injury stuff. He's a little older than Brian Burns in a more highly injury prone position. As I've said with that, I've thought Brian Burns' cost is, to me, Frank Clark minimum. I think.
Well, let me put one thing out there here. Brian Burns had his 5th-year option picked up.
Mhm.
What if you trade for him, get him to play out the rest of his rookie deal this year, next year? Next year he's due like $16 million, and then you go from there. Does that change your philosophy on this at all? It doesn't really for me, but it's worth considering. You do not have to extend him immediately.
I'd say no, because I'm not sure on where our first round pick's going to end up. Certainly, I'm not going to give him Denver's at this point, with that pick looking really meaty. And I don't know that I don't end up giving them a very, very high pick at that point for him.
Mhm.
I think he's not going to be willing to play through that extra year. He's going to want to be paid after this season 100%. And I think it's going to be hard pressed to hold him and lock him into that at that point. So my stance on it would be, it just doesn't make any sense with doing it, because I've got to pay him the contract if I bring him in. You make these kind of moves, you always end up giving him the money and the bag, and it always ends up being an inflated bag. The Chiefs had to give Clark the inflated bag. We had to give Adams the inflated bag. You're going to have to give Burns the inflated bag. It's too much cost for a position that, though it's somewhat of a need, it's maybe not the biggest need or anything close to the biggest need as we stand right now, especially with Mafe and his development into the future.
Yeah, I love the idea, but I don't think I would do it. I'm just gonna.
I love the idea, 2A3. I do. I love the idea of it. I'm certainly enamored by Brian Burns. I think he's a different player than what you have on this roster right now and what he would bring you to the position. But it is one of those maximum costs where it's a really go for it kind of move, where we're just not quite in that state to be in that lane. Garth Knight with a $5 donation. Thank you, Garth. It's good to see you in the chat, brother. Says Brando should have taken a hooker. He should have taken a hooker at SeaTac the other night, but the fact he didn't makes me think he's waiting for a hooker in the draft.
Mhm.
Oh, see what you did there, Garth. Very witty. Very witty.
I mean, if he does sneak into that second round somehow, that's pretty exciting.
That is, I think it matches up too to a fit in the way that they want to go after the position, and finding a guy that they can bring in here who's good to go and ready to go. I mean, even if he's a one read guy with his mobility, they could fit that in the roster well, get those other picks put to other positions, fill out more of that roster to that super team approach, which is the one, Brendan, I think that they're trying to apply to this team. And it fits the type, it fits the blueprint in that respect. So I would love if they could pull it out and get that guy in the second round at that point. That would be awesome. I first for me is a little bit much on it. I think I agree with you. Like, you kind of talked me into it. I do think I could see him going because of the need of the position, and those, there being so many teams that do. But in the second, I think that's great value for him. And I think he's done enough in 2 years of production at Tennessee, despite his age, to make me think that that's going to be he'll be a fine. I think he's going to be a pretty good player in this league.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, we got the Orin in the house. Garth Knight with another $5 donation. Thank you, Garth. Says Jay Cutler was a guy Elder Shannon fell in love with. Totally foolish. Like father, like son. I think they like fantasy numbers and stupid stuff like that. They have an odd view of the quarterback position, I think we can say, of the Shanahans at this point. Can we not, Brendan? If we look at their full view of these guys, let me give you some names, okay, Brendan? Let me give it, because we can't put Elway. Elway was before the time. He got the most out of Elway's career, to the elder Shanahan, but he didn't scout him and draft him and all that. He got him, right? He ended. So
yeah.
you got Jake Plummer, Robert Griffin, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jay Cutler, Trey
Bubby
Lance,
Brister.
Bubby Brister.
had to throw him out there.
Got to throw that one out there. Certainly not a lot of home runs in those quarterback selections. You could maybe say some solid doubles, I guess, in some of those guys, but not any guys that are no five toolers in there, is there, Brendan?
Yeah, it is worth noting, though, that I think Jay Cutler was the best quarterback in that draft. That was the Matt Leinart, Vince Young draft. So he was probably the best of a pretty terrible quarterback class. for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, that might be fair enough to say. And certainly he was a guy with the kind of arm strength he had that he brought. You thought coming from Vanderbilt, maybe you're getting a little bit of a cerebral guy with that arm. That's going to lend well together with what we're going to want our team to do. But I'll tell you this, Garth, it certainly has been a little bit of the place with when it comes to Shanahan, where I don't know if I have Shanahan in my hand as my coach, the guy telling me who he wants as his quarterback. I think I'm going to go find him his quarterback and just then he can take care of the rest. He can drop the offense and coach the team.
Yeah, kind of feel like they want to win the Super Bowl with a bad quarterback as like a difficulty curve thing.
They're leaning into it. They're going to lean into it. That's for sure. So
there was this clip I saw from a Stafford interview recently where he said, "Oh, I never thought I was going to get traded to the Rams. I thought I was going to the Niners. I thought it was a done deal." And if the Niners had Stafford last year, I think they're probably hoisting that Lombardi at the end of the day.
I agree with you. That would have been a move. And there was actually an interview, I think, where there was both Shanahan and McVay in on an interview, and he was asked about it with Shanahan, and he completely bristled. He was like, when he heard that they got Stafford, he was like, it just pissed him off because I think they were kind of in on it. But I think that was one where they didn't their GM didn't want to quite go to the cost that the Rams were willing to go at that point. And maybe again, this is why we're seeing the Christian McCaffrey move now is a little bit of the fallout from that. If we didn't go hard enough to get Stafford, we missed out on it. Now we better go hard enough on this McCaffrey move and make this work. God forbid the Rams find a way to pluck him from the Panthers if we don't.
Right. I agree.
Michael Austin with a $5 donation. Thank you, Michael. Says, do you think Seattle will make a trade for any pass rush before the deadline?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, as we were just speaking a second ago about Brian Burns, I think that's your really only viable potential target out there that they could maybe look at from an aggressive standpoint that would be on my radar. But as we just kind of broke down here, that's really not something that's likely to go down. You're just not going to see that kind of move, I don't think, made for a couple of variety of reasons. I can't think of any other even pass rusher that's moderately out there, Brendan, who has any interest for me on any of the teams that are in quote unquote sort of tank mode right now. So I don't even have a guy. I've been thinking about this, but there are so few teams that are technically in we're not in it mode like Panthers are. I don't think there's anybody else in. Is there anybody else out there you can think of?
Not really, no. I think most teams are, even in some cases, delusionally believing they can do it this year. And, I mean, you look at us, Nwosu's playing great. We need to figure out what Taylor is. We need to develop Mafe. Alton Robinson's going to come back. Like, I don't know if we need to trade for some mid-level pass rusher. Like, we don't need to get the Benson Mayoa types right now. And I don't see any blue chippers you could get. So what's the point?
I got a crazy idea that just came out of that from you saying that, by the way. What if a team came in and offered you like a second round pick for Nwosu?
I made a video about this earlier today. I'm kind of thinking I want to make Nwosu part of the next. I kind of want to keep him around long term. He's playing well. The team likes him. He likes being here. He's taking on this leadership role. He's turning his pressures into sacks, which is something he did not do in LA. I'm kind of wanting to extend him this upcoming offseason on a not top of the market pass rusher deal, kind of like those deals we gave Averill and Bennett back in the day where they're good, but it's not like it's not completely destroying your team. I view him as somebody who could be like that for this next Seahawks defense.
Okay. And I would tend to agree with you on it. I would just wonder if you do get a team that comes in with the offer too good to refuse potentially because there is such a dearth of potential pass rushers available here at this trade deadline. And
he's only 25.
No, I love him, man. Don't get me wrong. I love Uchenna. If you want to do that kind of move into this offseason where you do put him to a multi-year deal, especially if you can lower down that first year of his cap hit the last year of his cap hit in that deal. I'm certainly in favor of pulling some kind of move off like that. So, Michael, I just think it does come down to they got Bruce Irvin coming in too. So they've got the solid fourth guy coming back into tow. Alton Robinson will eventually make a return back onto this team as well. That gives you a fifth guy into this kind of rotation of things. So I just don't see there being a need from their standpoint at this point, considering that is, and there's just You have to have enough teams, Michael, that are in a, we're not, it's just, darn it, it's just not our year. So let's offload, like we're seeing with Carolina start to do now. Teams are going to be very hesitant to do that in this new modern NFL with 17 games because they all think they're going to be in it just a little bit longer into the year, or they think they got that one extra game now on the schedule to kind of start to turn things around and get hot.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the dono. Randall with another $20 dono. Thank you, Randall. I really do appreciate it. Says, crazy how quickly things change in the NFL. Remember when people thought the Niners had the brightest future in the West? QB doesn't develop, injuries and reach for a trade. Hawks' fortunes flipped on a trade and great draft. Always fluid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All because your coach sends your quarterback up the middle on a QB power run. I guess.
Yeah, I mean you force that to Brendan's point on that, Randall. They definitely, their coach there sort of made that happen a little bit with the quarterback and the not developing and injuries with that. But your point still stands. The NFL is one that is the most fluid of any of the sports. It's the most changeable of any of the sports. 6 teams leave the playoffs every year. 6 new ones enter the playoffs every year. I don't think that's always the same in all the other sports. So baseball this year, Dodgers were back in it. The Astros were back in it. Braves were back in it. You know, you have kind of all the same kind of teams. Your NBA the same way, right? Warriors will be in the playoffs, and the Bucks will be in the, like, you know who's going to be in and what's going to happen. I think the NFL has some top dogs too. It's got its Bills, its Chiefs, it's guys that are out there and done it, but it's got so much of a range of change. And the injury situation is just another thing that comes into it, along with the fact that guys really will fall off quick or get on their rise fast, and you'll get rookies developing. You know, all these things come in, and it creates a bit of a chaos situation. I love it though, Brendan. I also think it's why you can't steer away from necessarily being aggressive when you're in that position to do so. You want to make the right move still, but you don't want to let yourself be caught back by necessarily the treachery of offloading future value just on that basis alone, because things can flip fast.
Right. And that's why you always have to give yourself options here, like what the Seahawks are doing this year, where they didn't just throw everything away. And maybe if this division ends up being as overrated as it looks so far, they may be the team in position to take advantage and sneak a division title.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's absolutely right. And to me, if we got out of a division title with it this year, Brendan, and we pulled that off, it's going to mean so many good things. But it's why I say don't ever tank. Every year is so different and new, and so many different things can happen. You could find yourself moving into a tank state and look around and go, wait, this year was the year NFC was so bad. We could have slid on through with it if we'd just been in a mindset of actually just moderately going for it and keeping all hands on deck. So I agree, Randall. It's wild, it's crazy, but it's why you can't apply the same sort of view you apply of baseball to football or basketball to football, and how rosters are built, or how you view a team, or where you're at, or like what you heard, Brendan, with people saying when we moved Russell, that, oh, this means we're going into a dark age for 10 years. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. You know, we know that if bad decisions continue and maintain in the future, but to predict that just on the basis of, well, that's just what happens naturally, is presumptuous.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Thistle with a $5 donation says, Seahawks acquire Roquan Smith. The Bears acquire a 2023 third round pick and a 2024 fourth round pick. That'd be kind of a dream. That would be a dream requirement if we could pull that off, Jeffrey. So
that would require the Bears to just be like, we're done with it. Let's just get what we can. We're not going to get full value for him anymore, but obviously we're not bringing him back. Like, it would require the Bears to get to that point.
Yeah, when I saw your post on that, Jeffrey, at first I was like, well, there's no way that would be a deal. They would want much more than that. But I think, to Brendan's point on this, if it's been regarded at this point that it goes without saying he's going to move on at the end of the year anyway, and they're just looking at it as maybe we can get a compensatory pick, the top they could get is a third round pick at that point. And it would not be at the front of the third round as they would get from our pick here, but it would be at the back of the third round, and they would have to wait for that third round pick. Whereas they get this one immediately. And if you throw a kicker 2024 fourth rounder in there as well, could be enough to maybe push this through, especially if Seattle was to have to also sign him to a contract in it. So it's sort of like, well, we have to also pay him here. So you're going to get a little bit less than you would if this was just us getting him for club control, 2 club control years or something like that. So sign me up, man. I'm with it if they do it. But Jeffrey, I think they're going to, I just think they'll probably just sit pat at the end of the day on that one.
I agree.
John Robinson with a $2 donation. Thank you, John. Says, would you poach Brian Burns for a 2023 second and a 2024 second?
Which second? If it's our second, maybe. If it's the Broncos' second, no.
John, I would probably be leaning in the direction of saying no on this one, because again, it's not just those picks at that point; it's the contract you're agreeing to give to him, and I think he's going to want to be paid $25 million per year. I think it's the 4-year, $100 million deal with a lot of guaranteed. I'm not worried about his injury or whether he can hold up in the future, but that's the part that it really stings me. So I don't like that anymore, making these moves where we trade for the guy and then we got to sign him to a contract extension. We did it with Percy. I don't think it happened with Jimmy. I think we did get Jimmy at least did we sign him to a contract extension when
He was just on like that 4-year, $40 million left over from the Saints.
Okay. So you had a little bit of his left over, but you did it with Jamal a year after signing him. And we saw how big a contract we had to give him. What happens is once you sign for that trade for that player, the player knows you have to sign for that contract and they're going to hold out for the top market deal.
Yeah. Well, here's the question. Would you rather have Brian Burns for $25 million a year or Nwosu for $15 million a year and maybe another $10 million to go spend somewhere else? I'm kind of happy with the Nwosu for 15 if you can get him for that, which I kind of feel like you can.
Yeah, you've got him at 10 million right now. He ends up this season at maybe 9 sacks for the year, but plays overall solid ball for you. You see you come back. I think you're in realistic terms here. And yes, Nwosu at that, because what is Nwosu of Brian Burns? I mean, he's probably 88% of the player of Brian Burns, 89%. Is that fair enough?
Like that, yeah.
But you're getting him for at that point. You hopefully you're better at math than I am with this, but you're getting him at like 40% less a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair enough to say? So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
I think that's value building on your team. I think it's a proper value building. And I think that's that is a better route for me to go from my standpoint. Spread that money out a little bit more evenly at that point.
Right. I agree.
I do like it, John. I can see why you guys are looking at Brian. He is an awesome player. So I'm not going to be sad if we do trade for him, but I do have some hesitancies. I'm glad Brendan does too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gun shy. Just, we've been burned a little bit, my man. My heart's been broken a few times. Can't have it happen again.
Yeah.
Snail with the $2 donation. Thank you, Snail. Marcus Trufant is a legend. Sean Alexander is a Hall of Famer.
Well, there was a discussion in chat about this that we didn't pick up.
I had it a couple weeks ago because somebody said I think Seahawk legend in my chat, Marcus Trufant, and I said Seahawk legend. I was that one. I was like, I mean, he was good. I mean, but are we using legend for that application at this point? Are we applying it that broadly? Because that's pretty broad strokes at that point if we're going Marcus Trufant legend.
There are the people who do things like that sarcastically, but I don't think you're doing that with Marcus.
It seriously in my chat. They were meaning it like, because
it's like debate. Yeah, it's like when somebody says Gerald Everett Seahawks legend, and they're just joking around.
No, that would be totally
Alex Bannister Seahawks legend, but Trufant's like in the middle.
Yeah. Well, and that's how it started to get into a debate because they're like, well, then he was with the Coug. And I was like, okay, I'll give you Seattle sports legend. How about that? I'll give you that. But I'm not going, you can give me all I think he's in Tacoma and all that. I'll give you all that, but I ain't going, I don't know, Seahawks legend. We're using that pretty loosely. As far as Hall of Famer Alexander, where are you on that? I don't know if we've talked about that before.
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh,
I do. I think that if you're going to put Edgerrin James in the Hall of Fame, you should put Sean Alexander in. And I know that's a dangerous game to play, but to me, if you're going to be the best player I value peak more than longevity. Like, to me, I've said this before. I don't know where you stand on this. I wouldn't even put Frank Gore on the ballot. To me, it's a joke that people think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I hear people say Frank Gore should be in the Hall of Fame, and I'm like, not even close. Because at no point was he even, there might have been 1 year where he was a top 3 running back. So to me, I go, no, I'm not even considering Frank Gore. He wouldn't even be on my ballot. I wouldn't even say no to him because I wouldn't be talking to him. But Sean Alexander was a guy who was the best running back and maybe best player in the league for a year. He had that other year where the only guy better than him was Curtis Martin. His peak was really, really high. So I look at that and I go, that's what I value. When you were at your best, were you one of the best players in the league? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing I'd say with Edgerrin James would there'd be two things that he did far superior than Sean did. Number one, catching the football, and number two, pass protection. He was a complete running back, where Sean Alexander was a magnificent runner of the rock, but that is indeed all Sean Alexander did. The other aspects of the game weren't as important to him as far as being great in those respects of things.
Yeah.
The other thing is that where do you put the measure of what he had in front of him as far as having two Hall of Famers and having the line that he had, and then a guy like Holmgren with the decent quarterback, decent receivers, like he wasn't doing stuff necessarily, he's out there just being so amazing with it. It's like he had a lot of help too.
Yeah, I don't think that argument holds. I don't think that should affect things all that much. Like, he won a league MVP. He's got 100 touchdowns, which I'm pretty sure is well more than Edgerrin James. I think his numbers, his career volume numbers, are higher than Edge overall in general. He played in a Super Bowl, which Edge never did. Like, I look at that and I just go, if you're gonna put a guy like Edge in the Hall of Fame, then Sean should be in, and honestly, I think Marshawn Lynch should be in too as well. That's a debate for another time. But
Well, I'm with you, number one, on the Frank Gore stuff. So the Frank Gore thing, we're on the same track with that. Where I'm 100% with you with that is that I think that it does get measured to dominance. I think that just having longevity alone shouldn't be enough. I think your point about the top three running back thing is, well constituted with it. I'm looking just doing a quick look at their numbers here, though. So let's take this into account, Brennan. Edgerrin runs for 12,246 yards. Sean runs for 9,453.
okay, I
He
didn't
has
know it was that different.
he has 100 touchdowns. Edgerrin has 80 touchdowns.
Mhm.
Edgerrin had 433 catches for 3,360 yards. Sean had 215 carries for 1,520 yards. So an
Yeah.
additional, I mean, there was kind of to me, there was a little bit of a difference between, sort of what they were bringing in that respect of things. I think Sean had a very good career, but I think, and I agree with you that you shouldn't let the pass protection thing be the end all be all, or the run blocking be the end all be all, or what he had talent wise. That's not it on its own. But I also think it shouldn't be a complete non-factor either. The fact
Mhm.
that you had two Hall of Famers blocking for the majority of your career on the left side, and those guys being upper level run blockers at that for their time period, that to me there's got to be at least a tiny bit of measure added into that with this a bit. And when I put that in with the log jam of the position, where there's a lot of running backs at 10,000 yards who had a pretty good run at times, maybe not MVP run, but maybe have had themselves, let's say, maybe I'm sure there's a couple of those guys that have more all pros, let's say, than Sean did. That's what puts me hesitant. I can get why you would say, and I'm not saying it's a dumb argument at all to say Sean deserves. There's certainly an argument to be made for him to go in, but that's just kind of when I look at those two guys in the situation, I go, yeah, but there's some other things there with it. And he was he not an impact catching? He was bad. He had stone hands, and Holmgren to this day will still joke about how much Sean did not want to do anything in the pass protection game. Like, he'd get his quarterback blasted.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think, and I know this is a different circumstance, but Gale Sayers made the
Mhm.
Hall of Fame, even though he only played he played 6 years, and a couple of those years he basically didn't play
Mhm.
because he was so dominant for the short period of time he did play.
Right.
So that's what I value. I don't value this longevity stuff. Like get Frank Gore, he can go hang out with Vinny Testaverde. Like, no.
Well, see, I'm not a longevity guy on its own, but I do think you need to have some longevity too, because then you start opening up the Pandora of, okay, is it just 2 years enough of dominance? Is 3 years just enough of dominance? And that's where I look at Gale Sayers and I go, I don't know that he should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think that is enough for him to do it. I don't think Terrell Davis should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm okay with a short period of dominance, but I do think you got to get closer to not at 10 years, like you got to hit this 10-year period of dominance, but I think you got to be closer to a 10-year period of dominance. Then you got to be further away from it if we're going to talk about that. That's again got to be a factor to me to some degree, not the wholly factor. Like I said, a Frank Gore guy getting on is not going to be enough for me on that, but it's got to be some kind of point that you bring that into it too. Like, I don't know what the magical formula is on this, but I feel like kind of all that's got to be brought in a little bit when you're trying to consider, because it is so important to designate who's a Hall of Famer and who isn't, and where the line is at.
Okay, let me hit you with one more before we move on.
Okay.
Sterling Sharp.
Hmm.
You putting him in? Would you put him in if it was up to you? First team All Pro for like 3 years, best receiver in the league, and then his neck completely shattered or whatever it was that happened to him. Not good.
And I'm thinking on this one. I don't know that that's a tough one, man. I mean, you could make the argument. So here's his years, Brendan: 1,100 yards, 961, 1,461, 1,274, and then he had 1,119 yards in his last year. So he did put up, almost really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He put up 6,000 yard years, and then he had 800 yards receiving in his other season. That's getting a little bit closer to me to that 10-year time period that I was talking about, rather than him just having a 3-year run there. You could probably talk me into Shannon, because there is those years he put together there of such upper level production. And that was him having a 1,461 yard season at that time, when passing wasn't as prolific as it is now. It's like that's 1,800 yards in today's game, essentially, from an equivalency standpoint. So if you get into 6, 7, 8, but when you're at 4 years, 3, and you've had like 2 middling years around that, or bad years around that, I think that we're going to end up making it the Hall of Fame good if we start opening too far that definition of what is great and what we want to have as the greatness for the position.
Yeah, I'm just checking here. Yeah, Sean Alexander had 5 seasons of at least 1,100 yards and at least 16 touchdowns, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So not far off. 3 Pro Bowls, 1 All Pro. Okay. Yeah, okay. I wanted to see if it was 5 or 6. I knew it was one of those 2 numbers. I don't know. I just think what he did at his peak was so good, and his longevity was good enough to where he should get in. He's got like 11,000 yards on his career.
He does. And I mean, it's the people, there are people around him in the area that have, I think, gone, like, you've got Adrian James type that have gone into the Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be a little bit tough though, because he's right at that log jam spot. I don't know. Again, you can side me up to it, Brendan, but then this is where we also agree on the other side of it, where I don't necessarily think Sean is, but I do think, but I do think Marshawn is. Mm-hmm. So that's where it comes down to. I look at Marshawn, I do see the 10 years of dominance in there. He had a couple 1,000-yard season with Buffalo before he came here. He was not only an impactful player, but he was a defining player of his generation. He's got the numbers, he's got the time. To me, it's that it all sort of fits more with Marshawn, even though I think Marshawn might have like a couple less yards run for than Sean does at the end.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Alexander has volume stats on Marshawn. Obviously, he has touchdowns by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
But yards, I think he's a little ahead of it as well. Lynch has a ring. Sean doesn't.
It's true.
That's the thing. But either way, I think both should be in. I really do.
It'll be interesting to see with Sean. He's gonna come up, and they've had a chance to vote on him so far. And again, that's part of this, just the running back log jam there, because there's a lot of guys around the 10,000 mark that are kind of all sitting waiting to see if they're going to get their chance to be put in. But it'll be interesting with him. And Sean too, Marshawn as well, because I don't know if he's going to get in either on that, or where he'll be considered. He should, but both, it'll be a little bit of a question. Garth Knight with a $5 donation. Thank you, Garth. Says, I will say I'd rather give up what the Niners did for CMC than what the Hawks gave up for that New York Giants safety loser.
Oh, we're gonna get in a fight here. Okay, I see how things are. I mean, that's definitely true. It's like a 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick, 4th round pick. That's certainly better than mortgaging your future for a safety. But I don't think it's going to work out too much better than how it worked out for us.
Yeah, that's probably the most key point on it, Garth. I agree. I certainly would do this deal over what we did. And the fact is, they're not signing Christian McCaffrey to a new contract. I'll laugh if that's going to be the next move they make. Niners announced they're signing Christian McCaffrey to a 4-year, $52.7 million deal. That would be awesome if they did that. But they're going to get him on even though it's $11 million next year, they're on the hook for basically 2 years, $12 million for McCaffrey versus us, who was going to be on the hook for giving Jamal a safety breaking market deal.
Yeah.
That
You know
was,
what? You know what? We're gonna speak it into existence, Brandon, like LeVar Ball.
let's do it. Let's do
Yeah.
it. The Niners are just about due. They're in intense negotiations right now with Christian McCaffrey because they want to lock him up into the future. Shanahan's like, your father introduced me to my first lady, and that's like, I feel like I owe your family now. So there's like, I got to give back to you. And Super Bowls, Schmooper Bowls, we'll get to that stuff later. Right now, it's about repayment to you and your family, Mr. McCaffrey. Okay.
Yeah.
Ed was a great man. Ed was a great, great man.
We're gonna speak it into existence, people.
Let's make it happen. Thank you, Garth. I appreciate it. Daniel Bailey with a $5 donation. Thank you, Daniel. Says even at $25 million, Geno is still around 10% of the cap. That is ideal for a Super Bowl team. A safer bet and doesn't cost draft capital. 4-year window for Geno.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's optimal, but keeping Geno around if he's going to play like this at 25 million a year, building a great team around him, it's not that different than what the Rams did with Stafford, right? Because that first year Stafford was in LA, he didn't cost, the top of the market money, right?
No, it's partly because the Lions were eating the bonus
Right.
on the other side of it, so they just got it off the base at that point. But the point stands is that when you keep the cap low like that, historically speaking, that does open the door. Most of the time, it's because you've got the young guy on the rookie deal, but it can also be because you have a guy in the lower end contract just not taking up as much of the cap space. So Daniel, it certainly isn't going to be kneecapping necessarily at 10% of the cap. And I just ran the math, Brendan. And indeed, it is 10% at 25 million if the cap is at 230 million.
Right.
So
Well, remember that
the
first
key
year
on
is
that.
going to have a much lower cap hit too.
Right, exactly. If you're doing a multi-year deal, you're probably going to get that down at like 12, 13 in the first year, ideally speaking, which, again, there's a smart approach, especially if, sign me up on this too, Daniel, if this means they're more in favor of going for it quicker, us having to wait one more less year of in a rebuild mode, if they're going to make this kind of move. Yes, please. I'll go for that. I'll go for that because I want this team turning back around, trying to push this fast. Not long and hard.
Sure.
Thank you though, Daniel. Appreciate you, brother. Mark Sanchez with a $10 donation. Thank you, Mark. It says, if we go to the playoffs, would it be better to use the draft capital to build around Geno and the defense, then address the quarterback position in 2024, 2025? Wow, this is a great question, Mark. Right on the back of just what we were talking about. What do you think here, Brendan? I mean, we're saying, yes, we would do it, but I think you would be pretty right now. You seem kind of, you're open to the thought of bringing Geno back. You're curious by it. You're sort of like, well, okay, maybe but you'd be probably, if they went to the playoffs, you'd give me a hell yeah, wouldn't you? Give me one of those Stone Cold Austin, hell yeah.
Look, I would still say it's a perfectly valid idea. I don't think it's optimal. I still would say it's not optimal. You are when it comes to the most important position on a football team, which is what quarterback is, I want to reach for the stars. And you're losing out on the ability to have an elite quarterback making a few $1,000,000 when you go this Geno route. And I don't want to pass that up. Like, you miss out on getting Pat Mahomes MVP second year making like $5 million. You miss out on the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson winning MVP in his second year making practically nothing. I think it was like 2 million or something. You miss out on the Joe Burrow second year dragging his team to the Super Bowl. And I look, it's a gamble, but I say this all the time. Everything you do running a football team is a gamble. This is just a different gamble. Giving Geno Smith a bunch of money on a long-term deal is a gamble. I don't like it when people start pitching it like, oh, that's the safe option. There's no risk there because Geno's going to be this for the next 4 years, no doubt. And I'm like, no, it's just a different risk. So I'm going to say my preference would be reach for the stars when it comes to your quarterback. The upside is tremendous of having that elite quarterback on that rookie deal. But going with Geno would be okay.
Is there a not on statistical basis, just on how far he takes this team outside of getting to the Super Bowl, short of that, is there a place he could take this team into a deep playoff run to move you off this particular spot?
mean, if he gets to the NFC title game, then yeah, I'm going to have to reconsider. I'll deal with that reality when it becomes reality, is what I'm going to say,
Fair,
because I don't think it's very realistic yet. I
fair,
just don't.
fair enough. And Mark, I will tend to lean in Brendan's direction on this. If he does get to the playoffs, I think I've got to be a little more open to the idea of it does make sense to bring him back in, because you do have it established with the talent here, the familiarity with the guys around him. He is going to be getting older as a quarterback. We're just watching Russell Wilson at 34 years old start to really diminish in his skill set. That may be very truly where quarterbacks hit, to where they start to kind of fall down a little bit, get more injury prone. Geno's going to be getting up into that age point here pretty soon if you were to put him on this contract extension. So it's something to consider with this. I also believe, Mark, that a lot of the success from the quarterback position is going to be driven back and by what you're building around him. Geno is having the success he is because you have two rookie tackles playing pretty well on the edges. He has two top flight receivers out there who can, or somewhat of difference makers, if not truly difference makers at the position. He's got a tight end core that's pretty well stacked. He's had upper level running backs at the position. Put a guy back there at the quarterback position, young or not, he's going to be put in a really great position to succeed moving into the future, especially if the team can batten down the hatches with the center position and the guard positions.
Right. I agree.
Appreciate it though, Mark. Thank you so much. Snail with the $2 donation says Robbie Tobeck is a legend too.
Yeah, I mean, every team has those guys who aren't great, but the fan base just loves them.
I'm
Like they're
smelling a
not.
Coug. Personally, I'm smelling a Coug.
Yeah, that's probably what it is too. Abe Lucas too. But every fan base has guys that they just love, even though they're not the greatest players. Like Jets fans and Wayne Corbett. Wayne Corbett is not one of the greatest receivers ever, but they love that guy.
Oh yeah, that's a legend in New York, in New
Yeah,
York fandom. That's for true. And I know Snail's trolling me a little bit with this. So.
yeah. Who's the equivalent of Wayne Corbett for the Seahawks? Somebody who wasn't one of the great all-time players, but we kind of treat him like he is because we like him so much.
Paul Scansey. No,
Mm,
I
maybe
would.
KJ Wright.
Yeah, it would maybe be that. I'm trying to think. It's hard to do a linebacker to receiver. Like, they're just such different kinds of positions and what they bring. I don't know on that. Do we have a revered guy like that? Do we have in the fan base a guy like that that's looked at as who just was in and he's not historically looked at well? I mean, not really. Kind of the guys that we revere are the guys that are revered nationally, so to speak.
Feels like we love KJ more than you would expect for a guy who made one Pro Bowl in his career.
Yeah, that's maybe fair enough. I mean, that's probably the closest one you would come to with it of a guy that that's looked at through that vein. I can't think of anybody else though, Seahawks historically wise, that fits into that marker. So I'll go with that one too, I guess. Jesse Lund with a $2 donation says, give Nwosu the Quandre Diggs deal, 3 years, 40 million.
If he would take it,
Mm-hmm.
I would
Yeah,
do that.
Jesse. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to get the guy that we're getting this year so far, I'll plug down the money for that. I like having a little bit of a rotation situation with the defensive line, and certainly right now, Gerald Taylor, who we had thought about maybe being in a position. We never got a certain answer whether or not he's truly going into year 2 or 3 with that injury season counting or not, Brendan. But you certainly would love to get this locked in with not knowing necessarily where Taylor's going to go from a development standpoint moving into the future too.
Well, with the way Taylor's playing, he's not going to be able to ask for anything. What he's really
No.
going to, after this season that he's having right now, PFF
Yeah.
thinks he's basically a toddler out there. He's going to go up to the front office and be like, "Okay, I want my 80 million." No.
Yeah. No, it's I agree. I think he's going to be sitting on that restricted tag after this year is Taylor, if they do count that first year, which I think they are going to count it. But Nwosu's been great. He's been a very complete player. I think he fits well. He reminds me a lot of a little bit of what you got from Chris Clemens when he was here. Just a competent guy, smart guy, knows what he's doing. Also has a little bit of athleticness to him that's unique to the position, but good size, good strength, can hold up. He's been very impressive. And maybe I was trying to think about it. Maybe the second best free agent signing in Schneider's history here. I was going through the guys that he signed. We haven't had a lot of luck in free agency, Brendan, but I was thinking maybe he'd be the number forgot who I had at number 1, but
I was a big fan of the Tuba, but he wasn't a great signing.
yeah, he was not
At
bad.
Rubin, I
Yeah,
liked
Tava
him.
Rubin was good. That was a good signing too, especially for the value. That was a value signing, Brendan. Nick Craig with a $5 donation. Thank you, Nick. You guys are all awesome, by the way, on all the donations. I really do appreciate it. It says, for short burst players, I was always a first ballot Kenny Easley Hall of Fame backer. And as such, Sterling Sharp, both players dominated their position over 5 years. So once you get over the 5 and the 6, 7, you're getting a little closer to that decade time period. Doesn't have to be right at 10 years for me, but you start getting that place. I think you got to do it. And, Kenny definitely had that dominant factor you're talking about in the short period. I mean, 17 interceptions on just a 2-year period alone through that run. He was phenomenal, a complete safety. In my opinion, could have played in any era. He had legitimate size even for this time. If you asked him to trot out there, he could do it all. Just a fantastic player. Best safety in Seahawks history. Sorry for their old Thomas Cam Chancellor lovers out there, but easily the best.
He's definitely better than Cam. Earl, I'm not totally convinced on, but obviously Earl, we don't like to talk about him anymore anyway. So
he
whatever.
doesn't exist. No, I think he is better than Earl too, because I think Earl did something great in the one thing that he was asked to do, and it's not his fault he wasn't asked to do more, but he did the one thing great as a cover 3 center fielder. Easily could do the center fielder stuff. He could do strong safety stuff. He could cover one-on-one. He was great in man. He was great in zone. He was just, to me, a little more of a complete player than Thomas, and certainly a much, much better tackler than Thomas was. Just where I stand on it.
Yeah.
I like me some Kenny. But thank you, Nick. David Velez with the $5 dono. Thank you, David. Says, have you guys heard of the Seahawks trade for Roquan? And if so, what do you think? Wait, what's going on?
No, no, guys. I don't know how many of you people in the chat still believe it. There was an article posted, trades that make sense, and somebody saw it and thought it was trades that have happened in the last 30 minutes, which is insane that there would be that many trades in like such a short period of time anyway. It did not happen. No.
Okay. So David, we got the real juice over here. There is some of those, some of that's percolating out there, but nothing has actually happened with Roquan as of yet. But you can bet if we do a Roquan trade, me and Brendan will be doing an emergency stream to discuss it and how it affects this team. So you guys can count on that if that does occur with that. But nothing's going on, David. It's simply a lot of people trying to clickbait right now as they get close to the trade deadline here a little bit. Thank you, though, David. You're awesome. And John, you're awesome, too. Thank you for the $2 dono. Says, what if the 49ers convert CMC to a slot wide receiver in gadget only?
Giving up a bunch of draft picks for a gadget player? No, thank you.
That does make it a little bit tough, John. You did just put a ton of money into Deebo Samuel as kind of that gadget guy for you. You've got a first-round pick in Brandon Ayuk, and now you're going to dump all this into getting a slot guy in addition to that. That seems a bit much for a team that runs the ball. So it's like a pass-happy team investing in running backs. It's a little bit counterintuitive to the philosophy of the team, just a little bit.
Yeah,
so
like Mick Jagger holding a warm glass of milk.
Yeah, exactly. I will say this. I have always thought Christian McCaffrey would be better served as more of what Deebo is, as an in-between guy, really, rather than being run out there as this pure running back. I just thought from his size limitation standpoints, and then how good a hands he had, as good a route runner as he was. His dad, Ed McCaffrey, was a receiver. This kid was first and foremost, I'm guessing, taught with receiver skills, and that's why he looked so naturally at it coming out of college. But I do indeed think, John, that the Niners are going to keep him. They don't have a lot of answers at running back. It's kind of a need at this point to have to go in this direction of things. And I think that that's where he's going to get his run with them.
I agree.
I do agree. I do like John, though. That's where he should go. That's what should be happening at this time with Christian McCaffrey's career, with all of the wear off the tires and whatnot. That would be the smart approach. But seems like the NFL over and over sometimes, Brendan, you look at it and you go, man, why is it so hard to apply the smart approach? I'm not talking about brilliant approach, just the straightforward, this is what makes sense approach to things, as opposed to some running players into the ground or putting something into effect that's just going to have a short shelf life of viability. Mumbles with a $2 donation. Thank you, Mumbles, and appreciate you hanging in here, Brendan. Brandon Mebane to the Hall of Fame for that jelly roll. That sweet jelly
Was
roll.
Mebane how many guys left over from the Holmgren era were on that Super Bowl team? Was it just me, Bane?
Just me, Bane. Just my Bane. He was the last one,
Yeah,
the only one.
yeah. John Ryan wasn't from the Holmgren era, right?
I don't think
Okay.
so. I
Yeah.
might be
Okay.
wrong on
There you
that, but I
go.
might be wrong. I think Ryan was 2010, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, yeah, Brendan Bain, great jelly roll. Best one tech we've had in the Seattle. I think probably the best one tech in Seahawks history. You got a better one tech?
No, especially not when he was the one who won the Super Bowl.
Maybe Joe Nash. I don't know.
Mm,
But
that was
Brandon
before
Bain,
my time.
oh, I know. That's why Joe Nash, if you go look at it, had a pretty incredible career. How long he played and how many starts he played. I think he played more games than any other Seahawk in history, and doing it from the defensive tackle position in the kingdom, Brendan, with all that AstroTurf playing and stuff, and still as long as he was able to keep going. Fun player, hard worker. But McVay was good. He was the best. If you put the best one tech, we're putting all-time Seahawks team, and we can't just put 2-3 techs down there, and we got to pick a 1 and a 3. You're probably looking at Mebane and Cortez as your inside guys.
Right. I agree.
Barry Sotoro with a $5 donation. Thank you, Barry. Says Russ's new sub shop commercial is lower than low. Then Eddie Murphy's My Girl Wants to Party All the Time, or AB's Running.
Yeah.
I will say this about Eddie Murphy and the My Party All the Time thing is that, number one, not bad production quality, number one, for what it is. Number two, that was supposedly a bet between Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. And Eddie Murphy bet Richard Pryor that he could have a number one hit if he wanted to, and they bet $1 million on it. I don't think Pryor ever paid up, but that is what had Eddie then go drop probably $100,000 on Rick James to get him to produce the My Girl Wants to Party All the Time song, I believe is how that one kind of went. What do you think about that new Russia's new sub shop commercial, Brennan? Did it make you laugh? Were you bending over just going, these are so fun? He's such a natural actor. He's got the charisma.
Yeah, I mean it's wow, you know. His commercials used to be okay, like the Alaska Airlines ones were better than that, right?
I know. Well, it's like he's leaning too hard into the corny. It's almost like they're like, okay, we're not going to get you into a natural acting state like Peyton Manning. Like you just don't have kind of the chops he has with that. So we're going to just try to lean into the corniness, and then that'll make the people laugh. They'll be like, wow, he's just really leaning into it. Isn't it so crazy? And they'll like talk about it, and they'll make them want sandwiches.
Maybe we'd lean in. Maybe people would be receptive to that if the Broncos were winning right now, but it's kind of a bad look at the moment.
Oh, it's horrible timing, isn't it? Him having you're going, oh, dude, not right now. And we saw Baker get killed for this. You do too many commercials, you're not playing well, and it's you definitely get hammered for it, especially when they're bad commercials. At least be good commercials. Like he's literally doing the airplane into his mouth like a baby at one point in it. Here's the baby, here's the airplane. Woo. And you're like, oh, Russ, no, stop. No.
You don't need that a couple $100,000 from Subway.
You don't need that 200,000 Subway money, man. This isn't helping. This is not helping Russ. Michael Austin with a $2 donation says, do you think they will direct snap to K9 more?
Probably not. I kind of liked it though.
I did too. What drew out the direct snap, Michael Austin, was the Cardinals brought a stacked front all across the board there on that particular play. And so you saw this in Detroit a couple of weeks ago where they did it under center rather than in shotgun. It wasn't a direct snap, but it was that he audibled to Rashad Penny at that time for a really big run in that game because you were getting a casino blitz essentially running right through the blitz. It's one way to beat the blitz. And so it's a blitz beater. And so what you're doing there is that you're taking advantage of the instantaneous gaps that are opened up by the blitz because there's less guys, kind of linebackers lurking over the top. And then he can just get up into that and go. But you need the blitz look to do it. I think with Brendan, they're not going to do a lot of that again, but I could see them the way they would do it or when they would do it is if they get that stack front once again in shotgun and they know they can get right to that. He's so quick as K9. He can get through that hole. So the linemen don't have to hold up much of their block. And then he's to the second level with a lot of space at that point in time.
Yeah, I liked it. I was like, wow, been a while since I've seen a direct snap from the Seahawks.
Yeah. No, and how about Geno's,
the old Brady fake thing.
The Brady fake. It got me live. I was in the stadium and I saw it, and I thought that in live watching it as I was on the ground, it looked like it went over the top. Yeah. I did not see, even watching the replays a couple of times, it was a little bit of a a magic trick looking thing where it still couldn't quite pick it up. It wasn't really clear,
Yeah.
But they should, Michael. They should. Let's do it again. Worked well once. Let's throw it out there and let's make it happen one more time. Mark with the $5 donation says, is there anything going on with Lockett? Did he get a veteran rest day? Well, Brendan's got a little info on this one.
Yeah, I think there's something up with the hamstring. I think it's genuine. I think he will play, but I could see it zapping his effectiveness a little bit. And I think it is.
Yeah. There maybe does seem to be something there with that, Mark. He was one of the lowest rated guys in PFF's chart too, and he tends to be one of the highest rated guys week in and week out on the offensive side of the ball from a PFF standpoint. So he wasn't getting open by their measure, which is unusual. Brendan's referenced a stat where he's one of the guys who gets most open out there in the NFL on those advanced metric stats that exist out there. So it's an oddity that he had that drop off, and it does make you go to the going, there must be a little bit of an injury excuse. He's a guy too, just a little bit like that, where when he's banged up, he just doesn't play at the same rate he does, I think, when he's more closer to 100%.
Yeah, like that play right near the end when we were trying to ice it with the 40-yard deep ball to Lockett, and he got no separation on Marco Wilson, who's not even a good corner. When I saw that, I was like, that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And it's something they're going to have to definitely, you got to, the only way to get a hamstring figured out, Mark, is resting it. You're not going to do anything by keeping running and going out there and practicing constantly. It's going to stay bad. So it's something to monitor and watch. And we really need Eskridge now at this point to potentially step up if it's going to continue to be an issue. Yeah, I think we're almost caught up here. Oh, here we go. And thank you guys for all the donations again. I really do appreciate it. Barry Sotoro with a $5 donation says, how much of Russ's downfall is due to his life coach passing away?
I'm not really going to touch that one because there's no way for us to know. Like, anything we say would just be a pure guess. But I do know that there's a saying, successful people care about results. It doesn't matter why he's playing bad. It just matters that he is. And he needs to figure out a way to not play bad and earn the contract that he signed. So,
yeah, I don't have much as far as insight on this, Barry, to say that I know where what's going on in Russell's head and what is the cause, and if that is a cause. Certainly, when that happened and the man passed, it did affect him and his level of plays. We're not affect him, but he's been not as good since the passing of the life coach. That's something that's definitely been pretty obvious on this. I don't have a lot of sympathy for it. Brendan, do you have a life coach?
No.
Oh. I don't have a life coach either. I wonder how many of the people here in my chat right now, we've got 299 people in chat. How many of them do you think have a life coach?
I didn't even know there. Where would I go to hire a life coach? Is there like a 1-800 life coach I can call?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like somebody telling me like, well, my fluffer died, and I just haven't been the same since my fluffer died. I don't want to cast aspersions to mental health, and he's certainly in a position of much more stress and a much more higher worrisome occupation than I could be in. But if you're mentally, to me, as fragile as that sort of situation happening to cause your whole pro career to take you from a Hall of Fame level play of quarterback into now a shell of yourself, the mental strength that existed there at the beginning wasn't so strong, and that mental health, that life coach, I'd argue, was kind of holding it all together with a little bit of glue and tape. That would be just my opinion on it. And maybe I need to be a little more sympathetic to folks that need that kind of thing with the guy. But I just kind of, part of me is like, look, buck up. You're a grown man. You got kids. You're in a tough sport. You're well paid to be in that tough sport and to survive within it. I don't get the guy telling, stay neutral, just keep your head in your deal. Like, I don't get that. And maybe again, I'm probably just being a little cold blooded about it, but
I mean, I doubt Broncos fans care about that at all. They're like, look, we thought we were getting a franchise quarterback here. I don't care why we're not. I care about the fact that we're not. So perform. Whatever you have to do to perform. Was the life coach the reason why you couldn't solve a simple quarters man defense against the Chargers on Monday night? I wouldn't think so.
Yep. Nope, I wouldn't think so either. And that's why I can't put the blame on it for this as far as that goes. I think that's a good point, by the way. Just the stuff with the shoulders up stuff that he doesn't always get along with on it is that it's not progressed as much as his game. I just don't think that comes down to him not having his life coach there. That's about him getting himself more advanced in the sport, getting himself a little bit more into that advanced range of things that quarterbacks do tend to do by the time they reach here. Him getting as confused as often as he is by the blitz, Brendan, we're seeing it once again this year, right? I've harped on it with you for a year and a half on this stuff with him on, he doesn't pick up the blitz. He doesn't know where it's coming from. He gets surprised by it very often over and over again. And yeah, the offensive line's bad, but that stuff to me isn't that stuff, Brendan, you can control to a degree if you're doing enough film study of a defense to know when they're into this look, they're going to do that. When they're in that look, they're going to do this. I mean, unless every week the defenses are unveiling some magnificent new thing they don't do every prior week, which I don't think I buy that.
Yeah, maybe Wilson's contract needed the film study clause in it, not the Kyler contract.
Exactly. I will do 5 less Subway commercials and 20 hours more a week of film study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but who knows? There's no way any of us could possibly know what effect that had on Russ in terms of its actual impact.
Yeah, it's absolutely impossible to kind of measure, but there does seem to be there is a fork in the road of his career right at the time that indeed he did pass. That's for sure. Ryan C with a $5 donation. Thank you, Ryan. Tariq Woolen couldn't tackle the smallest receiver in preseason and is now tackling Ertz in the open field. Good coaching or personal effort?
Well, he was never a guy who didn't want to tackle. It's not like he's Deion Sanders out there making business decisions. I remember Ty Law back in the day making some business decisions. It wasn't like that. So I'm not surprised we're here. I didn't think we were going to get here already.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised he's become a capable tackler.
It's been very encouraging for me to see too, Ryan. I'm not completely surprised like Brendan is either that he's gotten to this place. There was a play that really stood out to me in the preseason against the Chicago Bears where the guy makes a catch down near the goal line and he's going for the end zone and Tariq just grabs him up around the shoulders and throws him down to the ground. And it was kind of a chip on your shoulder kind of play. It wasn't a finesse kind of tackle where he's dragging him to the ground. It was like, I'm pissed about giving up the catch and now I'm going to throw you down because of this. And that stood out to me of, okay, there maybe is a little bit of a dog in this guy to be able to pull that off. And it's really about want and having that dog. Whereas a lot of times those receivers, as I've had a friend who talks to me about this, these receiver guys that go to become a corner, they don't always want to tackle like you see in a guy like Diggs for the Cowboys. He's a former wide receiver who's become a cornerback who does not want to tackle. And those guys just tend to have a different mindset than the guys that are corners. But Tariq showed me on that one little play there, saw little other flashes, and I could understand why in preseason you're missing the technique, Ryan, because again, there's no practice time in pads or practicing really much tackling when you're in even training camp. The only live practicing they do get is going to be in the games. And so until you can have a few misses in games where you see what you did wrong, you didn't attack this leg right, attack the near leg, attack just the one leg, wrap it up, turn, these things, the pointers these coaches can give them are only going to occur once you got the film to utilize, because this is the new CBA. This is the new rules of the day, which is guys can't practice like they once could.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Carson Schroer with a $2 donation says, anything behind the Cliff Kyler drama or nah?
I mean, there's definitely something.
Yeah. Carson, certainly there's something there with them giving the contract extension to Cliff Kingsbury and the general manager before they gave the contract extension to Kyler was them rattling the saber of control and power, trying not to let Kyler feel like he's running the ship for them. They ended up giving him the contract extension. So they've kind of thrown that into the garbage the second they gave him the contract extension, because now you're married to Kyler Murray long-term. And now the only place to go make the change is with general manager or the coach. So now I don't like necessarily Cliff Kingsbury, but he's going to be the scapegoat fallout guy in this now, Brendan, because the fact that that's a bad contract and shouldn't have been given out in the first place to Kyler Murray.
Yeah. I don't see any coach going in there and doing the stuff that Cliff has done to cater to Kyler's skill set. So I don't see any way this ends well.
It's not going to end well. Kyler's in very much the same place in a similar situation to where Russ is for different reasons and different stuff that fixed into it. Some of it's the height limitation stuff and not being able to run all the normal NFL offensive stuff you're going to be asked to run, specifically the short and intermediate stuff, specifically the stuff to the middle of the field. But Cliff has been the guy, the number one. He's had Kyler back in college, or yeah, did he have in college, or he recruited him back in college? He's familiar with him. He has a whole offense designed around getting around this guy's height limitations, and it's not worked. It's not going to fix things moving on from Cliff, but this just helps our Seattle Seahawks into their future that much more, into one less team that I think we're going to have to worry about, really, from a standpoint of them being a real problem, right? A threat to us as we go in the future. I think they're going to be dealing with a lot of restructure, rebuild mode now when this starts going back down the hill.
Yeah, and JJ Watt's still playing well. What happens when he gets hurt? It's only going to get worse.
Has he's gone to 6 games yet this year? Isn't he was it 6 or 7, Brendan? You always tell me, is it 7 games he goes?
It's
6?
I think he's just hit 7, so I think we're at that point.
Oh, somebody's just turned into a pumpkin, Brendan. Well, it's Halloween, so I guess it's fitting for JJ, isn't it?
Yes.
I guess it's fitting. Well, there we go. So we got through the donations. Let's talk really quickly. I know we've kept you long here, but we're going to keep just really quickly our offense for dealing with the San Diego defense in this game. Where do you see being the keys on this game offensively to attacking this defense and getting up on them and being able to, something the Broncos couldn't do this last week?
Looking at this Chargers defense, they have 2 really, really obvious weak spots so far this year. It's Kenneth Murray and JC Jackson. It's actually amazing how they have some really nice guys, but those 2 guys seem like they're just dragging the whole thing down. And often on an NFL defense, you are only as strong as your weakest link. And I think that JC Jackson has been how does that happen, by the way? Just to talk about it for a second. How do you go from best corner in the league to massive net negative, maybe worst corner in the league in one off season? What is the logic here?
Well, certainly there's the recent history of guys that they're a free agent. They had their career year leading into free agency, and then they sort of shot their stack, and they're like, now they've gotten the pay. They're going to take a year off because they know they have a little bit of breathing room. Whereas before, playing for the Patriots especially, you knew he was probably every year making sure he had to be on his P's and Q's, grinding hard because he had Belichick watching, and Belichick's certainly not shy to get rid of you the second he thinks you're not effective anymore. So I think you probably lose a little bit of that edge in that situation, Brendan, which was a bit of an effect on this, no doubt about it. I can't imagine it being a poor fit for the scheme. The Rams are going to ask him to play man like he played man over in New England. He's going to be put in to do similar things he did there. So it's not a matter of that. And for him to be this bad with it, I can only go to it in my mind of going, he just didn't train this offseason. He just wasn't as committed to the process. He got it paid, got his bag, and he knew that was going to be probably the only bag he gets in his career. And, it's is what it is. Maybe it's human nature as much as anything, Brendan, but it doesn't surprise me. I think we've seen so many guys do this kind of thing, maybe not to this degree where it's this precipitous of a drop off. This is great. 35 PFF, 35. I mean, that's
30
PFF. That's
30.
league worst cornerback. I mean, that's to go from a guy, again, there was pros out there. There was guys like Deion Sanders last year saying this guy was the best cornerback in the league. So it's shocker for me that he goes to this spot of things. It also, Brendan, freaks me out about free agency. It's just, you go make a move like that makes so much sense, Brendan. You got Bosa and you got Khalil Mack. They're going to bring the pressure. You got a man-based corner out there that's going to lock down the best receiver. And it all sort of kind of fits together. But it's fallen on its face here with this. And they've got problems, man, because that other cornerback position is going to be weak for them. We can attack that. I like the other kid. I like Asante Samuel.
Asante Samuel Jr. is nice.
He's solid over there on that other side of things. And they've got a couple of safeties, Adderley and Derwin James. Yeah, they're really, Derwin's awesome. Derwin's got probably a good, strong claim to maybe be the best safety in the league this year. I mean, with the start that he's had so far, he may be on that trek to get there. Murray's having a hard time, but Tranquill's been pretty solid for them at the other linebacker spot.
Yeah.
Their other middle guy.
Mac's having a comeback year, by the way. Mac is actually playing amazing.
Oh yeah. No, he's been awesome on that side. And it's going to be a big test for Charles Cross this week going against him. A different kind of guy with Charles. He's had some guys that have been, I think, a little more I'm going to get around you. I'm going to use my speed quickness stuff. This week he gets more of the power guy than Khalil Mack, with that long arm move he's got where he can just ratchet the guy right up on his toes with just one single arm. It's going to be a tough battle for him.
I do know this Chargers defense plays more man than just about anyone else. They're like third in the league. And our offense has been great against man so far this year. Now, they probably won't run as much man because they know that. but it's still certainly notable, and it should be something we can take advantage of.
And it stands out with Lockett and DK both. Those guys, when you give them single coverage, they're going to feast on it. And so I agree to your point. I think there's going to be a little bit of Staley here going, I got to be a little more careful with this. I think he's going to try to run some cover 2 stuff and see if his front 7 can stop the run game at that point. Then it becomes about Kenneth Walker maybe making hay on that lightened box. And if he can do that, force them up, get them into man concepts, then Geno can start to feast over the top with the passing game. So to me, this is a little of a run sets up the pass week to me a little bit on the offense.
Yeah, I want to run the ball a little bit. They got Sebastian Joseph Day. He seems like he's just playing kind of okay so far this year. And overall, it seems like you can run the ball on them a little bit.
Yeah, they're not awful at it, but it's definitely a place I think where there's a little bit of an opening on it. So I would look for our offense to try to attack that way this week as a general philosophy of things. I don't think there's a big need to take tons of deep shots in this game, though. Brendan, there were some times they had blown coverages in that Bronco game, so maybe Geno does need to stay a little bit, stay a little bit out ahead of that particular situation in that respect of things. We haven't always gone to the deep ball this year.
Yeah. I do remember those broken coverages that you mentioned in that Denver game. The one to KJ Hamler right before half as well. That should have been an 80-yard walk-in touchdown if Wilson leads them. So I am looking at that. You said Adderley is their free safety, right?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like he's okay, but seems like there's some stuff you can do back there. Not having to deal with Bosa is a lifesaver. So
yeah, Bosa would be a problem with Luke, Lucas on the other side. That would not be good. That'd be a tough matchup for him.
Yeah. But I'm feeling like we can do some damage on this defense.
I do as well. You pointed out how bad they've been here recently, bad last year. So it's not been just a recent affair. They've not gone against, as we talked about earlier, a murderous row of offenses. They've gone against some okay offenses, but outside of the Chiefs one, it hasn't been any real true game records it hasn't been like top 6-7 offenses across the board they've been going up against, and they're light-handed. And this is the Seahawks offense that's right now, what'd you say, 8th in the league right now. So
I think so.
That's something that should work really well in the Seahawks' favor this week. We'll see what they can kind of pull off on that. I think that we are going to put up our share of points. I don't know where the Chargers will be putting up their share of points, but Brendan, let's get to the spot of where we want on predictions with this. Where does this game break down for you as far as how this plays out?
I think the defensive line, I think the defensive front is going to play well against the Chargers' weakened offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is going to create some opportunities to get turnovers. And this team has actually done a pretty decent job of taking advantage of their opportunities to force turnovers. Woolen's not dropping those interceptions that are hitting him in the hands.
No.
When Kobe forces a fumble, somebody's there to jump on it.
Yep.
So I look at what that Chargers offense did on Monday night. And short week, by the way. Short week, overtime game, ugly game. I know they got to stay at home the whole week because it was an LA game and now this is an LA game. But I look at that and I just go, I think we can do some of the things that we did against the Cardinals against this Chargers offense. So I'm going to say the defense keeps LA below 20 points.
Ooh, bold.
Yeah, a little bit bold, but they don't have their kicker either, just like Arizona didn't have their kicker.
True.
Like, what if they end up going for it on every 4th down inside on our side of the field?
Well, that's where we've been good this year with teams. That's what got Kingsbury in trouble in this last game, was trying to go for 4th down too much against this Carroll defense. Carroll's defense is going to tighten up as it gets down into the red zone. That's historically always how he has done it, even though you might be able to move between the 20s. So that would fit into you're sort of kind of leaning into Carroll's bag at that point if you decide to try to go for more 4th downs, then you're not. I mean, maybe if this team holds them to 20 points, that'd be such a great sign if they can pull it down. So do you think then, I'm guessing that we come away with the win on this one?
I think I'm there now, especially if Lindsley's out. Even if Keenan Allen is in, like, what's he going to be able to do? He's a route runner. He's not somebody who can just go out there and waddle around and catch passes because he's like 6'6" or something. No, he's a route runner. He's got a hamstring injury. You want to put him out there through that? Like, that may not be good.
Yeah.
So I look at it and I go, with all these injuries, missing Bosa, missing Slater, missing possibly Lindsley, Keenan Allen, their kicker, the issues that they have at receiver. Like Josh Palmer's probably out. Donald Parham Jr. is probably out, so they're down their second tight end. You probably should win this game.
Mm-hmm. No, I can see it when you put it all together like that with the injuries and where they're at shortened week too. As you said, we had the shortened week against the Niners. Look how bad we looked in San Francisco coming off that one less of day of a rest early on this season. It does impact when you're already on a short week, theoretically with seven days as it is between the, particular games. So I think I do look a little bit at Keenan Allen, like a little bit like I look at DeAndre Hopkins for Kyler Murray, and that there seems to be a bit of a difference in Herbert and what he does back there when he has Keenan versus when he doesn't have Keenan. So you're right about the hammy that could be holding them up, but that is my one worry with it. Give me a score.
24-17.
24-17. I'm going to go 30-26 Seahawks in this game. So a little bit of an odd score on this part, but I'm going to go 30-26 Seahawks. I think we put up a lot of points on this defense. I do think they're able to move the ball a little bit on us, but I think that you're right. What ends up bearing out on this is they're just a little bit too short-handed on both sides of the balls at key positions versus us it similarly is not in the same kind of place, and that's going to allow us to kind of carry this day. 283 with a $5 donation. Thank you. 283 says every free moment he could find, he'd disappear to the film room and study more tape on how much film Russ watches. Yeah, I hear those stories.
Yeah.
I hear those stories, but something doesn't add up with that for me, Brendan. What do you think about it?
Well, what good is it? What good is it if you can't see the crossers wide open over the middle when you're playing this crappy Chargers defense? Like we've seen the images by now. Of course we have, where there's a Denver receiver wide open in the middle of the field, just like, throw me the ball, throw me the ball, throw me the ball. And Wilson's like looking off into space, trying to throw a 800-yard touchdown every play.
Yeah, they got those, what are those things you pop and they burn and you're like,
the signal flare.
The signal flares. They're popping the signal flares in front of him.
Yeah, and look, I'm always cautious about using still images to judge a quarterback because you're missing so much context, but we have 10 years of evidence that he's not seen that stuff over the middle. And like we were talking about with this Chargers defense, they run quarters one side, man to the other side over and over and over again, and he just keeps not taking advantage of that defense. The crossers are open.
Yeah, that's my thing with watching the tape. If you're watching so much tape, why is it the most simplistic of things can beat you? What upended the 2022 season? What was the grand design of defensive coordinators and the way that they would take this Russell Wilson year in which he was on pace to set the NFL record for touchdowns thrown in a year? What was the big grand thing they did? Cover two.
Yeah.
That was it. Cover two. We're going to run cover two. And that stifled Russ. Stifled him to the core. And so if you're watching tape, it should be, if a defense then beats you, it's something that's so complicated they haven't shown you before, or something you've seen that they've changed a little bit to this, not something that's beating you over and over and over again in the same vein of things, as was the case in the end of that 2020 season. That cover two thing threw our whole offense completely out of line moving forward from that moment on. So I hear he studies and I hear he's this guy in that, but if you're going to study that much, you shouldn't be confused this much. You shouldn't be as easily beat from a schematic standpoint as much as Russell is, if that's the case. And I agree with you on the stills. It's not something you'd want to tend to just pull from on its own. But when you have, like you said, those 10 years, how many meme pictures did you and I see through our years of covering this of moments like the Rams game in the playoffs? Remember that one that was out for a while running around where Russell's dropping back and he ends up throwing a locket go ball, and he's got literally three guys open underneath at that point with time on the clock. We've seen those things with Russ for years on there, and Bronco fans are getting a taste for it now. And it's hard to not look at those pictures and go, wait, how is he not seeing that guy right in front of him? It's right in front of him. It's right there.
Right.
That Bronco one this last again with Dolce in the middle of the field was particularly bad. Though, Brendan, that was
right.
The blockers have it like wide open in the middle of the field. All right. Snail says Dr. Dornick with a $2 donation says Dr. Dornick is a legend. He is, but it's for his doctoral endeavors. It's for what he did for all the sick children. That's the real reason there, Snail. So that's why he's a legend. All right. Well, we got caught up on all the donations. My goodness, you guys, thank you so much for all the donations on into the chat. me and Brendan are feeling pretty good about this particular team. Both of us have got this as a win in this upcoming week. We like where this team is at. Brendan had an awesome video he just did this week. It's, I know, setting records over on his channel for views, I believe you said. So go over if you have a chance and check out him talking a little bit about that Russell Wilson situation and where we're going to go at with that. I'm putting together a video for my own self on that because we can start to, I think, Brendan, firmly stand now after this much data. We've been through enough of this year now to go, okay, we can see where this is going. And where it's going is in a best case scenario, right? Just to finish on this.
I would say so, yeah.
I mean, you're talking about, you and I debated a little bit about this on Monday of where this trade ranks in NFL history. The more I think about it, Brendan, the more I'm in favor of saying this is right behind the Herschel Walker trade. And there's really not, number 3 is probably a little bit of a distant number 3 when this all gets bore out of it, as far as the returns you're able to pull from this. So not only did your team kill it in the draft, you've got one amazing looking draft up on the horizon, and it's setting you up to be successful and where you're going to be placed within it. Not to mention the team's playing way better than we had thought I think they were going to be at this year. Is that fair to say, Brendan?
Well, they're playing better on offense than I expected. I know that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was expecting more from the defense. Overall, I thought we were going to be 3-3, and we're 3-3. So I don't know about that, but they're more lively than I thought they would be. They're more fun than I thought they would be.
Are you a little more in the position of feeling more comfortable about the future of the team and the hands that it is in right now than you were beginning this year, or in the same place?
Little bit. I'll say a little bit better on that front.
I will as well. Just a smidge bit better, but a little bit better indeed, at least at that point, as far as the hands we got in this. Certainly it's something that's encouraging us to know when you look at the Russell Wilson situation. They read that one right, which was a part of this assessment this year, was how the coaching staff and front office viewed Russell to make this trade at this time, and whether or not, he goes off and wins a Super Bowl in other places, and you had that in your back pocket the whole time, and you weren't taking advantage of it.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you guys for turning out here. I really do appreciate it. Do me a couple of different favors here. Hit that like button first and foremost. It helps this channel out, helps it grow tremendously. Do also please subscribe. We are on the road to the spot that Brendan just hit on his side of the channel, which is 10,000 subscribers. So please, if you're not subscribed, get subscribed. And then the third thing, if you can do for me, is go over to Seahawks Brendan Nelson's channel here on YouTube and subscribe to him. We do these 2 shows every week. He'll be back over here on our side of things this next Tuesday, and then I'll be over on his side of things. But we do 2 shows a week here, so please do get subscribed over to his side so you can catch my appearances over there as well. I do appreciate it as ever, Brendan, you hanging in. We got up 2.5 hours here, so we did a super long show there. So thank you so much for hanging in here with me on that. It's always good talking shop with you. I do appreciate it. But beyond that,
no problem.
I think we should remind these guys they're feeling good, Brendan. They don't need a lot of reminder, but we're going to do it anyway. You know what I mean? They're feeling good. They're going to do it anyway. So let's do it on this, which is, don't you guys forget here now in this rebuild years, we're heading to draft picks in the future. We're here right now. We're not go Hawks for once we got these draft picks. We're go Hawks for this season. We're in the mix, folks. I'm saying we're in first place, Brendan. I don't care about tiebreakers this early. It doesn't matter this early. We play them again future on the year. We can even this up down the line. We're in this right now. Let's go for it right now. What the hell, Brendan? Do you got something to do? You got something to do this year? So let's go for this. How's that sound to you?
We're getting our top pick regardless.
Yeah, we're getting it
taken care of.
House money, baby. Free money, no expectations. Let's go get it. Let's go get it. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thank you so much. But please do not ever forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.